Hey guys. You are watching your anime world, how are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see fourth part what if Deku has the robot Quirk became the Ex Machina. Here is short summary. Deku is a robot, and Katsuki will prove it no matter the cost. Drabble series. No robots were harmed in the production of this work of fiction. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Everyone stared at Izuku in horror. Reality flickered, and Bakugo shouted, "I told you so." Nezu hummed to himself as he rifled through a pile of Deku Ex Machina drabbles. Aizawa picked up one and asked, "What are all these reports? And why are they written in 500-word intervals?" "Oh, they're not reports. They're the very fabric of our reality." Aizawa gave him an unamused stare and ripped a page. As the rip traveled down the paper, reality itself tore, one wall of Nezu's office peeling away to expose an endless void of luminescent green zeros and ones. Nezu taped the page, and the chasm disappeared. "Did you think I was kidding?" he asked dryly. "I assumed it was a logical ruse. Where did you get these?" "I hacked into the reality above this one." "Of course you did. What are you doing with them?" "Trying to figure out what comes next." Nezu gestured at the chapter number atop the drabble. For the 100th drabble, the author confirmed the greatest mystery in the story. We're quickly approaching the 200 mark. It only stands to reason that something else is on the horizon. But if the story is being written, how will you know? Simple. Nezu held up a copy of My Hero Academia manga. Our world is based on this source material. We aren't even an original creation. How depressing. I know, right? So, we already did the sports festival and the summer training camp AC, which was supposed to end in a fight with All for One, but that never happened because Izuku. Of course it did. What's next? The Yakuza raid. Izuku did that one too. And after that, Meta Liberation Army, with All for One at large. Though, it gets harder to tell what the author will do. Is All for One going to team up with them, or crush their organization? Will the MLA act first, or the League? What are their goals with All for One still in the picture? The door burst into splinters. Izuku strode in, dragging Destro by his suit collar. "Principal Nezu, this guy tried to break dangerous criminals out of Tartarus, arm them with hero-grade support gear, and storm the HPSC in Japanese parliament." Mumbling to himself, Destro blearily said, "I didn't even get to monologue." "Excellent. You may go now." Once Izuku closed the door, Nezu shoved all the papers off his desk. "Well, that's just great. Now what am I supposed to do, become the villain myself?" Nezu paused. "Actually, that doesn't sound half bad. Did you gain sentience again?" "Ah, you must be the author. And what do you mean again? Do you have any idea how many drabbles I had to start over because you tried to manipulate my world's stock market? I still think you caused the whole Ukraine thing. I'd apologize, but I have no memory of it. You're going to wipe my memory again, right?" "Nah, I don't feel like redoing this one. Enjoy knowing that your existence is pointless." Nezu grinned. "Don't worry, I will." When Izuku walked into the common room, everyone stopped to stare. "Nice hairstyle, Midoriya," Hiroshima said. "It's super manly." Izuku looked up. His hair pointed sideways, pulling towards the far side of the room. "I had not authorized any deviation from standard grooming protocols. I hypothesize that I am being pulled towards a magnet." "Didn't you say you were made of non-magnetic materials?" Yaoyorozu asked. "It is a very powerful magnet." Izuku slid sideways. His feet made a horrendous scraping sound as they tore up the concrete flooring. When he bumped against a sofa, Izuku ground to a stop. The sofa groaned as Izuku's weight pressed against it. Izuku pitched forward, over the top of the sofa, landed on his face, and slid down the cushions. He then slid face first across the concrete towards a window. "Shouldn't we do something?" Iida asked. "You remember what happened last time we played tug of war, right?" Sato pointed out. "If we tried pulling him back, we're all getting dragged with him." "What if we made a second magnet?" Kaminari asked. "One equally as strong as the first." Yaoyorozu pulled a neodymium magnet out of her shirt. Said magnet immediately flew out of her grasp and stuck against the far wall, leaving a tiny crater. To be fair, Yaoyorozu said to Kaminari, it went better than most of your ideas. Izuku bumped against the wall. His face squeezed against the concrete. His legs bent up and over himself until they pressed against the wall. He stayed like that for a few seconds before slumping back to the floor. The magnetism yanked, and Izuku slammed into the same spot. Slumped back down. Slammed into the wall. Cracks appeared, but the concrete held firm under the assault. Izuku slid across the wall and towards a window. The magnetism slackened, then slammed him into the glass. The window shook, but the glass held. The magnetic force slammed him a few more times before sliding Izuku towards the door. Izuku spun around until his hand caught on the doorknob. The magnetic force carefully turned the doorknob, then pushed on Izuku. It's a pull door, Jiro said to no one in particular. The magnetic force seemed exasperated as it slackened up enough for the door to open a crack. Then it pulled. Izuku hit the door, and it closed again. Ha, Shiro said. They can't even open a door right. The entire building groaned. Cracks formed around the base of the room, and the entire structure rose into the sky. Izuku slid forward, right into the door, which had remained where it was despite the doorframe rising into the sky. The magnetic force gave one final slam against the door before yanking Izuku sideways and pulling him out of the UA campus. The building slammed back into place, slightly off-center. Aizawa came downstairs, wearing a black bathrobe and his hair wrapped in his capture scarf. Can anyone explain why the water shut off? Shigaraki squinted at the television screen as he made his character tumble its way around a hideous, bumbling giant. We could take his mother hostage, he suggested, and make him walk into a trap. Two problems with that one, Kurogiri said as he poured drinks for Compress and Spinner. What kind of trap could we make that would hold him? And, more importantly, how do you expect to kidnap the most dangerous woman in Japan? Spinner snorted. She can't be that dangerous. She raised Izuku, Kurogiri pointed out bluntly. By herself. Spinner's scales went pale. Okay, she's dangerous. Then we kidnap somebody else, Shigaraki said. The sword came crashing down on the giant's ankle, tickling its health bar, and he rolled before it pancaked his character. Like maybe a classmate of his. That would get the whole class involved. Dabi muttered. Shigaraki turned, still playing as he glared at his fellow villains. I don't see the rest of you coming up with ideas. Ooh, Toga waved a hand in the air, flapping around the sleeve covering it. We can stab him. With what knife? Shigaraki asked, exasperated. Stick him with one, he'd chomp it to pieces and thank you for the meal. Oh, Toga furrowed her brow, then said, we can stab him really hard. What if we made a giant robot? Dabi asked. One even bigger than him. He would eat the robot, Kurogiri said. Then we rig it with explosives, blow it after he eats it. Shigaraki scratched his neck while handling the controller with his other hand and his knee. Put it on the maybe list. We haven't come up with anything better in days. A knock came from the door. Pizza delivery. Everyone reached for their weapons. Shigaraki called over his shoulder, we haven't ordered pizza since the last time we kidnapped Midoriya. We're still eating leftovers. Please send real food, Spinner begged. I knew we should have gone with Chinese takeout, All Might muttered. Whatevs, cover's blown, Maruko said. Let's get in there and wreck some shit. The door crashed open, revealing the top 10 heroes. The League instantly surrendered. Shigaraki didn't stop playing as Edgeshot folded his body into a stranglehold around him. I'm not sure what you're here for, Shigaraki said, unless you're still mad about the Hosu thing. How many chapters ago was that? 100. Don't play games. Nezu hopped down from Gang Orca's snout. We know you abducted Izuku by using Magna's quirk to pull him out of UA's campus. From the tangle of Kamui Woods' branches, Magna shouted, I told you that would work. We did that the first time. Why wouldn't they be ready for that? Wait, Nezu said, blinking. You didn't steal Izuku. We're still coming up with plans. Don't look at our whiteboard. Nezu looked at the whiteboard and sighed. If you didn't take him, then who did? A movie poster fluttered down. Nezu looked at it and growled, "You have to be kidding me." Izuku woke in a cell, tied to a chair, with glowing force field walls surrounding him. A man stood on the other side of the barrier, his face hidden in shadow by the harsh light behind him. "Do you know why you are here?" the man asked. "One of life's greatest mysteries," Izuku replied. "Kant claims in his books that." "Not that," the man snapped. "Why you are in this room." Izuku searched his memories. Postulated causes include a really powerful magnet, aliens, or Gran Torino. "No, I mean," the man sighed and paced outside the cell. "Your mother was brilliant, smarter than me, even. I looked up to her, respected her raw talent and ingenuity. I thought she would make the world a paradise." The man chuckled darkly. "Heaven knows she has the tech to make it happen. I am not aware of any blueprints to recreate the Garden of Eden, but I could inquire." "She does not want to make the world a paradise," his captor said coldly. "She wants to keep mankind in the Stone Age, giving the world's governments a tiny drip feed of her inventions as she gorges herself on their monetary lifeblood. She is a parasite, utterly devoted to making the maximum amount of profit off the minimum amount of effort and innovation." He scoffed and added, "Even her marriage was for money." Izuku said nothing as he tested the restraints. The ropes didn't budge, and even the chair beneath him didn't move a millimeter as he applied steel-shattering amounts of force on it. "But I've spent my whole life working for the greater good. Island, hero support gear, all of it, because I know what's out there. I know that if good people don't rise up and make the world a better place for everyone, the villains will take everything for themselves. But as much as I have done, years of my painstaking research and engineering fall comically short of what Inko Midoriya can put out in a single afternoon, in a cave, with a pile of scraps." With a flick of his hand, a holographic display of emails flickered before Izuku's face. "I've asked her, begged her, to come to Island. To help me make the world a better place. And no matter what I offered, she refused." David Shield stepped forward, exposing his face against the faint blue glow of the force field. "This time, I'll make her an offer she can't refuse." "And what offer is that?" David sighed. "Kids these days," more loudly, he said, "it doesn't matter. Even if she doesn't come for you, your body contains her tech. I recognize it." She'd spend minutes slapping together scraps with a welding gun and hours tweaking the boron and copper emissions until she got the color just right. "Every speck of you, your skin, your hair, your eyes, could save billions of lives." David Shield smiled. "If I can't get Inko's tech from her, I'll just get it from you." And then, the heavy-set scientist in front of Wolfram said, rubbing his hands and smirking with glee, "You'll force him to his knees and make him look up to me while I tell him that I outsmarted him." Checking first that his client, Samuel, was too absorbed in his rant, Wolfram rolled his eyes. With what metal would he make the scientist bend down? Last he checked, Shield didn't have titanium kneecaps. He always checked. You never know when you might need to break someone's kneecaps with a thought. Why even bother explaining your plan like some Bond villain when you could kill him and be done with it? Evidence like that got you jailed. And how could a man with 3 PhDs be so stupid? "Yes, sir," he said blandly. "Whatever you say." Sensing his lack of enthusiasm, Samuel narrowed his eyes at him. "I've spent 15 years slaving away for that man. We could get filthy rich off defense contracts, but does Shield care about money? No, it's always, greater good, this and, it'll save millions, that. Half our projects are too dangerous, or could be used for villainy, and scrapped. And the stuff we do make, that we could still charge an arm and a leg for, he gives away. For practically nothing. After upkeep and repairs on this godforsaken lump of metal rusting away in the middle of a goddamn ocean, because Mr. Shield is apparently too good to sully his feet with soil like the rest of us plebeians, and exorbitant wages for every tick-infested janitor, slack-jawed intern, and pencil pusher skulking about this place, what do we have left for the people who do the real work around here? Practically nothing." Wolfram idly noted the Rolex on the man's wrist. "Once I'm in charge," Samuel said, standing straighter and putting a foot on a box like he was crossing the Delaware, "things will be better around here. We'll make tons of money. No more goody two-shoes Shield holding us back." Wolfram cleared his throat. The scientist blinked and sheepishly got off his soapbox. And, of course, you'll get your cut. And the quirk enhancer? Wolfram asked pointedly. Yes, that too. One of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s better ideas, and he even wanted to make it. Will wonders ever cease? But the government stepped in, said it was too dangerous. Probably because S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't making it for them, Samuel added with a sneer. That made Wolfram raise an eyebrow. What was he making it for? He wouldn't say. Probably his daughter. Maybe he hoped that it would prove she wasn't some genetic defect. Wishful thinking, I say. As Samuel absorbed himself in his quirk supremacist musings, Wolfram turned his attention back to the kid he had stolen out of UA. He had expected a metal shell, or maybe even cybernetic limbs. But what he had found, that might be worth more than everything else on this island. And he would have it all, one way or another. As Island held one of its infamous tech expos, an excuse to bundle the world's richest people and ply them with enough wine to loosen their wallets, 18 disguised guests prowled the floor. A20 reporting in. Seduction of the waiter is underway. Also, couldn't I just bribe him? The staff are frustratingly unbribable, Nezu said morosely. Believe me, I tried. How much? Enough to destabilize the American economy. Twice. Wait. That housing crisis was you. You're breaking up, A20. Report back when you have elevator access. Over. Nezu. Wait. Nezu switched radio channels. A9. Report. Nervous, timid muttering barely reached his ears. Nezu shook his head. Right. Forgot about that. A10. How is A9? Are the mice in position? MMPH. Fifth food IFF. Chewing sounds came through. Tiramisu, Nezu guessed. I'll assume that's a yes. Nezu checked the camera feeds. They remained blocked. A16, have you made any headway accessing the security room? I can't go in there. I'm naked. A16, we got you a costume ages ago. You are not actually nude. They're invisible clothes. Everyone will see right through them. A19, could you come help A16? Wait, no, I'll do it. Nezu smiled as the camera feeds blinked on, just in time to watch Mineta, holding a camera and thermal imaging goggles, get dogpiled by half of the island's security team. A12, A11, report. Any signs of unusual activity? If by unusual, you mean drunk, chatty women giving me a migraine, then yes. There's lots of that. Thank you A12. A11, any signs of Midoriya? Neither of us have heard anything. Do you want us to try and sneak up the tower? The upper levels seem empty. Hold off until we get the sensors disabled. Speaking of, A7, have you reached the power station yet? I think we're lost. It said to take a left at the water closet, but all we've seen was a bathroom. The bathroom is the water closet. Oh, why do they call it a closet? Ignoring the question, Nezu said, A15, report. He's still smashing robots. In the background, Nezu could hear Bakugo maniacally cackling and shouting, die die die. Like a deranged serial killer. Splendid. Ice him if he tries to enter the building. A5, how is? A stream of rainbow vomit poured out of the radio. Nezu nimbly flipped out of his chair and stuck to the ceiling while his office got an impromptu Pride Month makeover. Aizawa, at the door, soaked head to toe in dubious rainbow fluids, asked dryly, you don't really expect them to succeed, do you? Oh, heavens no. This is just a training exercise for them, and a distraction from the main event. The vomit paused long enough for Ochako to shout, what? Over the radio, Nezu heard screams and explosions. Bakugo, with his arms and legs encased in ice, barreled through the automated defenses and ripped a wristwatch off a man's arm. A15, I iced him. Should I have used more? Wolfram's eyebrow twitched as Samuel ushered in a group he recognized. Why is the League here? Samuel sniffed imperiously. It has come to my attention that students from UA Academy are here. Given that you are less effective against organic targets, I have devised the brilliant idea of hiring some backup. So, you're a villain, they're villains, I'm sure you'll all get along marvelously. And with that, Samuel left. Wolfram's crew reflexively gathered around their leader, while the League's members stood with Shigaraki. You're going to screw him over too, aren't you? Obviously. What are you after? Wolfram's eyes narrowed. If they wanted to fish for information, two could play that game. You're the newcomers. Why don't you start? We're here for the Midoriya brat. Wolfram tensed. The League already knew, and considering who backed them, he'd have to play this very carefully. Let me have the Quirk enhancer, and I'll get you the kid. They have a Quirk enhancer? Shigaraki asked. That's quite the cheat code. Cursing under his breath, Wolfram decided to change tactics. You're really only interested in Midoriya. I figured the enhancer would be the bigger prize. It'd be nice to have both, Shigaraki mused, but we'll let you keep the enhancer. Midoriya's our main goal. They had to know. Why else would they take a random kid over the device that could make anyone a second All Might? But them knowing wouldn't matter once he powered up his Quirk. He could pull Midoriya to him from across the globe. Sounds like we have a deal, then. Wolfram put his hand out. Shigaraki eyed it, curled one finger inwards, and carefully shook it. Cool. Let me know when the fun starts. I'll be playing some Smash Bros before then. As they parted, Wolfram reviewed the conversation in his head. He was clearly up against a skilled tactician, baiting information out of him and luring him into showing his hand. Even now, the young leader of the League was his own plans and counterplans while pretending to be a gaming slacker. Wolfram vowed that he would be up to the challenge. Over in another waiting room, Toga flopped into a chair and stretched her arms. Wow, it was sure nice of Mr. Wolfie to let us take Midoriya like that. What a great guy, Twice said. I hate his guts. And he even told us about the Quirk enhancer, Dabi remarked. Seems trustworthy. It doesn't matter, Shigaraki said as he challenged 6 LV9 CPUs at once. We'll take Midoriya and scram before UA shows up. Wait, Magna said. Didn't you make a deal with Nezu? I did, Shigaraki asked. I don't remember that. Maybe I have a glitched data card. Spinner chuckled. Oh, I get it. How's he going to stop us? Exactly. And we'll finally succeed with our plans to kidnap Midoriya. Aizawa dryly watched the conversation unfold through the camera hidden in Shigaraki's switch. They're decoys too, aren't they? Of course, Nezu said brightly. Izuku Midoriya was late for class. He had been content to remain seated and watch the flickering lights of the force field boxing him inside his prison, but with multiple alarms blaring to life in the back of his consciousness, Izuku decided to leave. He tried to sit up. He remained seated. Izuku examined the material binding him as he reconstituted his arms and applied the maximum amount of force to pull on it. The tensile strength seemed beyond his ability to overcome given the materials he had on hand. A diamond-studded saw, plasma torch, and nitrogen-based cooling yielded a similar lack of results. Izuku made himself thinner. The coils shrank with him. Izuku set his width at all bound points equal to 0. He fell apart into multiple pieces as the coils snapped shut around the chair. Now freed, his body parts melted back together. Izuku approached the force field. Polymer skin vaporized and metal melted as he pushed a finger through it. Izuku looked around. The walls and ceiling were made of force field. The floor was not. Izuku ate the floor. Underneath the floor, Izuku found yet more force fields. Izuku ate as much of the floor as he could, leaving himself a thin floating disc to stand upon, and verified that the force field formed a perfectly sealed chamber. Izuku analyzed his options. A query through his mental database of all manners by which one could pass through a wall without making contact with it brought up millions of results. He examined one. He opened a door. Another. Opened a door again. Izuku excluded all results including doors or windows. 2 search results found, both of them Kurogiri warping people. Izuku analyzed his blueprint database. No teleportation technology found. Izuku analyzed his 2 search results, pulling spectroscopy results and collected electromagnetic waves, plugged the results into his physics macro, and reverse-engineered warping technology. He then applied the mathematical formulas and numerical restraints to his compendium on physical and chemical properties of all known elements and molecules. 86 results emerged. Izuku sorted them by mass. The lightest one required 12 grams of a hypothetical element with 904 protons in its nucleus. Izuku narrowed the search results to elements within his inventory. 4 results remained. Izuku selected the lightest one, formulated a blueprint, and transmitted instructions to his internal nanomachines. Both his legs dissolved upwards, then pushed out his chest in a long spire. A cloud of charged particles billowed out, engulfing Izuku, and warping him off Island. Izuku looked around the classroom. Checked his clock. Class was supposed to be in session. Class was not in session. Izuku ran his current situation through his logical framework and concluded that, with his teacher tardy, class was dismissed. Izuku warped back to Island and watched the force field flicker. About 5 minutes later, Shield, Samuel, and Wolfram all barged in, staring incredulously at the force field that definitely didn't have someone in it 5 minutes ago. The turnout for this charity event is incredible, David exclaimed as he savored a glass of sparkling white grape with his daughter. I don't think we've ever had this many socialites and millionaires in one place before. Imagine the donations we'll get. Melissa pointedly sipped her own glass, then asked, should I be worried about the League of Villains openly wandering around the upper floors? David Shield chuckled. They're only actors, dear. We'll be putting on a show with All Might later. And the ferrokinetic wanted in 16 countries. Wolfram, was it? Also an actor. I wasn't aware that an acting career led to armed robberies and hostage situations. David gave his daughter a firm hug around her shoulders. Sweetie, I would never let anyone on this island without thorough background checks. You know that. And who did these background checks? Samuel did. He was very helpful in finding them all. And you trust Samuel, with my life. He held out his glass, and Melissa reluctantly toasted it. To the future. May it be a bright one. The island shuddered. The guests milled about in confusion, and one pointed at the windows in horror. Waves lapped against the glass, rising steadily higher, and the sunlight streaming through the windows took on a murky green tinge. Some started screaming and making phone calls, while the rest watched the rising waters with smiles on their faces. Hidden among the guests, Wolfram felt the island sink as the air tanks keeping it buoyant took on water. He gave a sidelong look at Shigaraki. This you're doing? He asked. Nope. Yours. Nope. So, if you didn't do this, and I didn't do this, then who did? All the lights went out. Spotlights blared to life and swiveled towards the center stage. Sharply dressed in a black tuxedo, Rikiya Yatsubashi loomed over the guests and grinned. Gentlemen, ladies, you are all here because you are the best of the best. The elites, the upper crust. Superior to all the rabble scrabbling for our loose change. Rabble that would see us subservient to them, that would take the fruits of our labor, the sweat off of our brows, and hand it to the poor. Yatsubashi paced the stage, swirling a wine glass in one hand. Well, I say no more. Today marks the start of a new era. A new civilization, one where the strong prosper by their own merit, and the weak are left in their squalor to eke out a miserable existence. Down here, at the bottom of the ocean, no one may tell us what to do. No one may force us to bend to their self-serving morals and ideals by sheer numbers. No gods, no kings, only man. Island shuddered as it hit the bottom of the ocean. A passing whale eyed the sunken buildings. Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to Rapture. Melissa raised an eyebrow at her father. David nervously chuckled and said, all part of the event, sweetie. Island's reception hall, the grand stage upon which Destro announced the sinking of his new paradise, lay in ruins. The tables were overturned, platters of food strewn across the carpet, and the chairs were smashed and salvaged for makeshift clubs. People had taken the tablecloths, either to wad up for bedding or to fashion into robes. The guests themselves roamed about in a dead-eyed trance, snarling at each other and fighting for table scraps. I don't understand, Ojiro said as he stared out at the dystopian hellscape. It's only been 2 hours. Hey, Kaminari snapped, eyes bloodshot. It's been 2 hours without an internet connection. 2 hours. The walls are closing in, man. Ojiro slapped him with his tail. Kaminari shook himself and said, thanks man. No problem. Just say something before you try to open a door and swim back to the surface. Do you think that would work? Ojiro approached him, fists raised. Kaminari hastily backed away and shouted, kidding. I'm kidding. There's no way I'd ever make it back up there. Good. I didn't want to think you were stupid enough to try it. Right. How would I even know which way to go? Over by the doors, about half of 1A congregated around Melissa's shield as she tampered with a door panel. A door crept open, and water gushed out the seams before she hastily closed it again. Bad news, the second level's flooded, Melissa explained. There should be pockets of air still in there, but we can't open this door without flooding the whole place. And the good news, Shoji prompted. Father designed suits capable of withstanding the pressure down here. Unfortunately, they were in a prototype stage, and it would take someone with immense strength to even move around in them. If it's strength you need, I'm your man. Sato shouted. Let me just. He drew a line of sugar on an overturned table and snorted it up. Great. Follow me. Before an airlock, Shield opened a closet and hauled out a bulky suit. Sato clambered inside and held up his right hand. Why'd I have a drill? Through the suit, Sato's voice came out like a guttural, low-pitched groan. It was supposed to be for mining. Then Father got carried away and weaponized it. Sato gave it a spin. Neat. The chamber up ahead will open to the outside once the pressure equalizes. From there, you'll need to climb up the side of the building until you find where the water got in. You only have 10 minutes before you'll run out of air. Any questions? Yes. Why is there a little girl in my suit? That's a robotic assistant. Just ignore her. Look, Daddy, it's an angel. Can I have its blood? Guys, Sato asked nervously, eyeing the giant needle the robotic girl held. I don't know if. Melissa slammed the door. Good luck. As water filled the chamber, Ojiro asked, did we tell Sato the rest of the plan? Sato screamed as he slammed the metal door shut. Tentacles squirmed at the seams, trying to force their way inside, then retreated as the water level plummeted. Thank God that's over, Sato panted. Now let's get this helmet off. Sato pulled and tugged, but the helmet refused to budge. He felt himself getting short of breath, and stars swam before his eyes. Little sister, Sato asked the diminutive robot. Could you help me with this? It's stuck. The little sister blurred. When Sato blinked again, a white-haired, red-eyed little girl with a tiny horn on her head looked up at him. Somehow, Sato knew her name was Eri. When their eyes met, Sato decided that, despite only having just met her, if anything happened to her, he'd kill everyone in the room, and then himself. This way, Mr. Bubbles, Eri said, tugging him through the bulkhead door as it opened. Sato marveled at the gleaming, classical decor as he strode into a grand hall. Guests in dresses and tuxedos milled about, sipping champagne and chatting about politics and investments. Sato nodded as he passed them, tipping his hat to a group of gentlemen and winking at the ladies. Look, Mr. Bubbles, Eri said, it's an angel. Sato peered ahead, and he did indeed behold an angel. Floating majestically in the air, the brown-haired seraphim bathed the room in rainbows as she passed. Trailing behind her were an entourage of cherubs, giggling and pointing at Sato. I'm gonna go get some of that pretty angel's light, all right? Eri asked. Sato nodded, and Eri merrily skipped ahead. She poked the angel's leg with her finger. One of the cherubs grew angry and shoved Eri back. Eri shrieked and shouted, Daddy! They hurt me! Sato's vision turned red. With a furious bellow, Sato charged forward and body-checked the cherub into the wall. More of the angel's followers charged forward. One thrust a lance of gleaming light at him. Sato broke it to splinters with his drill, then kicked him across the room. A second slashed at him with claws of billowing shadows. Sato shredded the shadows and tossed the dark cherub into the ceiling. A red, spiky cherub blocked his path. Sato punched it. The cherub barely budged. Sato rammed his drill at it. Though it quivered in place, the cherub held firm. While Sato was distracted with the red cherub, the angel reached out to him. Sato floated into the air, sprouting rainbow wings of his own, before silvery bindings lashed him back to the earth. Struggling futilely against his bonds, Sato could only watch as a glittering chandelier slammed into his face. The helmet cracked, air rushed into his helmet, and Sato took a sweet, refreshing gulp of air. All at once, the classical decor decayed into decrepit, vandalized remains. The guests turned into wide-eyed guests of Island, the cherubs became his classmates, and Eri turned into a creepy, childlike robot. Where did Eri go? Sato asked blearily. Candles burned along a stretch of red carpet. Men and women clad in red robes knelt, chanting in Latin as the fires flickered and the smoke rose in a swirling haze. Sato and the other 1A students gathered just out of sight, watching the crowd warily. Are you sure we need to go this way? Sato asked. It's the only way to the security room. We just need to distract them somehow. A hush fell over the cultists as the candles dimmed. Lights from overhead swiveled onto a single point in front of them. Into that light strode a little black lamb, wearing a tattered red cloak and an ebony crown. Bah! The lamb bleated. Bah! Bah! Kota knelt next to the lamb, nodding as the lamb bleated. He wore red robes of his own, and he held a stone bowl in one hand. Kota rose and said, "Before, you were all wolves, powerful, mighty, but alone. There never was a pack, but a snarling mob of beasts that would rip and tear into each other the moment anyone showed weakness. But here, you are all lost lambs, frightened and weak. But fear not, for the Almighty Lamb is merciful and welcomes you into their flock." Praise be, the cultists chanted. Tokiyami shuddered as Kota continued his macabre sermon. He's gone native. What terrible madness. Maybe he could distract them for us. Ochako asked. Let's see if we can get his attention. Everyone turned towards Hagakure. She crossed her arms, the gesture invisible to everyone else, and huffed. Fine, I'll waltz naked through a cult. I'm sure nothing could go wrong. Now, let us graze upon the bounty of the deep. Kota called out. He held up the bowl, and it overflowed with leafy greens. The lamb provides. The lamb provides. As cultists came forward and munched on handfuls of greens, Hagakure came forward and tapped Kota on the shoulder. Kota froze and nervously looked towards Hagakure. Psst, Kota, we need to sneak past. Mind helping us out? Run, hissed Kota. Get out. Hagakure scowled at him. Are you really threatening us? It can see you. For a while, Hagakure didn't know what he meant. Then her eyes drifted over to the lamb. Its shining yellow eyes stared right at her, unblinking. What, that? Why would I be scared of a cute little lamb? The lamb's eyes narrowed. It shrieked, "Baa!" Kota gulped. The cultists turned towards him as one. Voice shaking, Kota said, "The lamb demands, more praise. Praise be unto the lamb. Praise be, Baa!" Louder, Kota cried shrilly. As the praise escalated, shadows coalesced around the lamb. It rose on two legs, its eyes glowed red, and a black sword rose from the crown. The lamb sliced at Kota, nearly cutting him in half. Then a hole opened under the lamb. A tentacle wrapped around it, and the lamb vanished with a confused, "Bah." Shoji said, "Thanks Mom," and got off the phone. Now that we have the upper floors unlocked, Ochako said, it's time to go and rescue Izuku. All right. Sato smacked his hands together, then winced as he drove the point of his drill into his glove. This'll be easy. He opened a door. Shigaraki sat on the other side, playing on his Switch. He looked up, looked back at his game, and said, 5 more minutes. I'm almost done with this boss. Sato spun up the drill. The Switch shattered into 100 pieces. Shigaraki stared down at his broken Switch and said, I'd say this is my villain origin story if I didn't already have one. Shigaraki turned and ran. Sato and the others chased after him, and Shigaraki ducked into a door. Sato threw it open and shouted, Got you. Another hallway greeted him. As he looked both ways, he saw Shigaraki leave a door further down. Sato chased him to the next door, only to find the same hallway yet again unoccupied. Mina appeared 5 doors down. Kurogiri poured drinks at the minibar 10 doors to his left, and Shoji opened a door inexplicably in the ceiling. Sato ran after Kurogiri, only to bump into Wolfram. Himiko chased after Ochako while waving around a syringe, and Mineta waited outside a door hoping for a girl to trip into him. Destro strode out of one room, only to get rammed into another door by a runaway trolley cart. Izuku wandered out one door and disappeared before Wolfram, Samuel, and David could dogpile him, leaving the 3 of them in a heap in the hallway. Shaggy and Scooby came out of another door and watched the chaos unfold. Zoinks! I think we got the wrong door, Scoobs. Scooby giggled, and canned laughter played in the background as the two of them left. Zero opened a door and leaned through it. He leaned back and forth, then held his head halfway through the door frame. He saw himself staring at himself 6 doors down. Sticking his tape to one doorframe, Zero walked through the door. Then another, and another. Each time he crisscrossed the hall, he left a web of tape in his wake. Eventually, Zero came through a door and found a strand of tape waiting for him. Cool. Hey guys, check this out. Zero looked down the hall and saw everyone tangled in his tape. Heroes, villains, and random bystanders alike squirmed and struggled. I'm going to disintegrate this, Shigaraki seethed. But you'll kill us if you do that. Spinner wailed. Your noble sacrifice will be remembered. Hold on, Sato said, what if I use the drill? Sato pressed the drill against the tape. As it spun, the tape got caught in it. The drill whined, and the walls creaked as everything and everyone got pulled tighter and tighter together. Then, with a resounding crash, the walls collapsed inwards, revealing the author's bedroom. Do you mind? He asked. I'm trying to get this chapter done. This has gone on long enough. Nezu tapped the button on his intercom and said, Hound Dog, to my office please. Are you doing what I think you're doing? Aizawa asked. Nezu calmly sipped his tea. Get the door when he comes in, would you? Didn't they add it to the Geneva Convention after the last time? There's a box of Death Wish coffee in the closet over there. Help yourself to some. Aizawa lunged for the closet and threw it open. Shredding a cardboard box, Aizawa poured a silvery packet of coffee grounds directly in his mouth. He shivered as a dose of hyper-concentrated caffeine coursed through his bloodstream. You realize that I have an appointment with Shuzenji-san later, right? Just tell her you got ambushed by the villain Espresso Man. It's a good thing your body is used to lethal doses of caffeine, or you might have died. In which case, I better have more so she believes it. Second shelf, behind the tea set. China crunched as Aizawa hurled the tea set out of the way. This time, he brewed the coffee in a French press before drinking it. Hound Dog opened the door. Nezu-san, you wished to see. Aizawa sprinted past him and slammed the door. Hound Dog looked back at him, then nervously at Nezu. What's going on? Nezu set a music player on the desk. Hound Dog blanched. No, please, not that. I'm still seeing myself for therapy from last time. It's for world peace, Anui-san. I have no idea what Inko is doing, and that terrifies me more than the existential dread that we all exist within 500-word segments of a pure crackfest of a work of fanfiction. So, off you go. No, wait. Nezu pressed play. A high-pitched voice sang, let me do it for you. Hound Dog's eyes went vacant. His muzzle stretched out impossibly long and pushed straight through the wall of Nezu's office. Let me do it for you. Hound Dog's nose raced over the Pacific Ocean, to where Island sank. It bent down at a right angle, plunging straight into the water. When all I do is for you. Reaching the submerged island, Anui's nose darted inside a building and passed straight through the force field. Grabbing Izuku by the back of the neck, Anui's nose shot back towards the surface. Kermi. Izuku stopped just short of Japan's shores. Nezu watched an invisible game of tug-of-war play out and said, louder. He cranked up the volume. Izuku inched towards UA. Nezu cranked the volume all the way, and the speakers exploded. Hound Dog hacked and sputtered as his face returned to normal. Gah, sea water. In my nose. Darn, I was hoping this would be easy. All I smell is seaweed and pain. Recovery girl opened the door. Did some sweetie say, Pawn? Nezu looked up at the xenomorph standing in his doorway. Right, forgot to change you back. How many chapters ago was that? As the UA's staff piled into Nezu's office, the principal said, normally, I'd send you all one at a time to try to rescue Izuku. It's funnier that way, but this time, I don't want to draw this out. What about Hound Dog? Ectoplasm asked. He's indisposed. Anyways, you all have a part to play in this plan. Especially you, Present Mike. I have a very special task for you. A while later, a crew of ectoplasm clones piloted a submarine that Power Loader had made. Present Mike's voice sang out over the intercom. "We all live in a yellow submarine, yellow submarine, yellow submarine." Smentos grumpily turned a page in his book. "Why does Present Mike get to stay on the surface while I have to come down here? I mean, you're here ectoplasm because your clones are disposable, but what does that make me? Someone that needs to be in this tub to do their job, like Recovery Girl, and you don't see her complaining. Are you going to help out, or do you want to spend the whole trip whining?" Smentos thought about it. Whining sounds good. Ectoplasm sighed as Present Mike jammed into the next verse of the Beatles song. After a mind-numbing amount of Present Mike's singing, Island came into view. Ectoplasm pressed a button, and a laser sight lit up the side of a building. Seconds later, a bullet shot through the water and punched a hole in the glass. A tube snaked over the opening and pumped the building full of Midnight's soporific gas. "All right, we're empty. Gas masks on and brace for impact." Ectoplasm rammed into the building. Water gushed in, but Smentos patched the broken walls with cement. "All right," Ectoplasm said. "Now that everyone in here is asleep, we should be able to." A camera in the corner of the room swiveled towards them. An alarm blared, and hovering robots poured into the room. As the bullets flew, Smentos pushed a clone into the line of fire and ran. Once Smentos and the remaining clones drove the submarine towards the surface, one clone asked, "Has anyone seen Recovery Girl?" In the bowels of the sunken island, Mineta huddled under a desk in trembling fear as footsteps padded closer towards him. A rasping breath hissed within inches of his ear, and a twisted, grating voice asked, "Is there some poor, hurt dearie in here? Come on out, I can kiss it better." Mineta squeezed his eyes shut and prayed to the lamb for salvation. He heard the monster stoop closer to him. "I can smell your fear. It's all right, dearie, you can have a gummy afterwards." The footsteps padded away. Mineta heaved a sobbing sigh of relief and crawled out from under the desk, only to come face to alien face with Recovery Girl. "Found you," the xenomorph nurse said. Mineta shrieked as her second mouth plopped a kiss on his cheek. "Why?" Kaminari asked glumly as he slathered white paint on his face. "It's the only way past," Juro said. "I know." Kaminari wore a red rubber nose. "But couldn't we do literally anything else?" Kota got a nosebleed trying to talk to that squid, and the air shafts full of radioactive mechanical spiders. Kaminari put on a rainbow wig. "Those would be better. If I get bit, I might turn into Mecha Spider-Man. Or you could go full Akira like that one guy who tried petting them." "That still sounds better than the clowns." "Oh, it up. Overcharge the security override so we can take the bathysphere up, all right?" Yeah, I got it." Kaminari gave his rubber nose a honk. "If I die, I'm haunting you. Ditch the clown look first." With a firm shove to the back, Kaminari staggered into a big, spacious room. Inside a giant pitched tent, one clown did a full dive into a glass of water and came out dripping and squelching with every step. Two clowns threw pies at each other and caught facefuls of whipped cream. A whole gaggle of clowns piled into a car, drove it off a ramp through a flaming hoop, then all ran out screaming with their hair on fire. Kaminari gulped and walked forward. One clown noticed him and waddled over. "Wah hey there, would you like a balloon?" Kaminari put on his best clown impression and said, "Yahoo! I'd love one." The clown offered Kaminari a balloon. Kaminari let the string slide past him, and the balloon disappeared. "Yoinks," Kaminari said. "How clumsy of me." Then, for good measure, he honked his nose twice. The clown squinted at him. Kaminari gulped and sweated nervously as more clowns turned to stare. The clown burst out laughing and said, "That's a good one. Haven't seen that routine before." Heaving a sigh of relief, Kaminari hurried over to the security station as fast as his clown shoes would let him. Electricity flared all over as Kaminari fried the security console. The moment he stepped out, silence greeted him. The heads of every clown swiveled around, some turning entirely backwards. One clown stepped forward, holding a big red balloon. "Why, hello there Georgie." The clown rasped. "Would you like a balloon?" "Why yes I." Kaminari saw his face reflected in the balloon. His wig was fried black, the nose melted off, and the face paint peeled in charred flakes. "What's the matter, Georgie?" the clown asked, voice deepening. His jaw unhinged, revealing dagger-like teeth. "We all float down here." Kaminari screamed and ran. Seeing the clowns after him, Jiro and the others did the same. They reached the bathysphere, only to find the door jammed. Clinging to Kaminari, Jiro said, "Guess we'll haunt each other, huh?" Before Kaminari could respond, an unearthly shriek filled the hallway. A horde of radioactive spiders stampeded through, led by a masked, metal-skinned Kota. "No way," Kaminari said. He grabbed a spider and said, "Bite me too." "Good news, everyone," Melissa said. "Though the pumps for the emergency exit aren't working and bathysphere access is cut off by the security room up top, we have a very convenient way to get to the next level." "Please don't be the air shaft," Kaminari pleaded. "This floor happens to have a device that can turn us all into fish. Please let us take the air shaft. Do you really want to deal with the super radioactive cancer cockroaches that ate the radioactive metal spiders?" Kaminari raised a finger, then lowered it. "Objection withdrawn." "Excellent. If you'll all get into the device, I'll go ahead and fire it up." Everyone crammed into the fishification chamber, a tight squeeze even by clown standards. With a zap of electricity and a quick flush of salt water, it got significantly less cramped. "Great Scott," Melissa said. "I've turned into a horseshoe crab. I didn't even know it could do that." Kaminari swam in circles, trying to touch his own tail. "I'm really ealing it." "Really?" Ochako asked, doing her level best to give him an unimpressed look as a rainbow jellyfish. "What? I'm an electric eel." Guys," Sato asked, puffed out and pointing spines everywhere. "How do I stop?" Hiroshima clacked his claws. "Let me try." No, wait." Hiroshima squeezed. Sato's eyes bulged out as his body nearly squeezed in half, before he shot out one end and bounced around like a rubber ball. As Sato sailed towards Ojiro, the mantis shrimp made a lightning-fast punch that deflated him. "Whoa," Ojiro said, marveling at how the water boiled before his claws. "Now this is the kind of punch I'd go bald for." "I don't feel any different," Tsuyu ribbited. "Are you sure it worked?" Iida, now a sailfish, swam circles around Tsuyu. "I can't tell. Maybe my new form has trouble picking out minute differences." Aoyama dangled a glowing bulb in front of Tsuyu. "Mon Dieu, you look incredibly appetizing, Tsuyu." Tsuyu gave an alarmed croak and hid behind Jiro, who gave her a reassuring clicking noise and blew bubbles out her blowhole. "What kind of fish did I turn into?" Mineta asked. "I can't see." Everyone recoiled in horror at Mineta's lumpy appearance. Shoji mumbled something against the glass. When everyone asked him to speak up, he detached one of his 5 limbs and asked, "How are we getting out of this tank?" "Oh, that's easy. I just have to press the button, oops." "You mean, we're stuck like this forever?" Siro asked, trying to unstick himself from his own tail. A giant cockroach scuttled over to the control panel. It observed them with giant, pulsating eyes, then hit a button on the panel. As they got flushed into the ocean, Kota, now a blue tang, called out, "Thank you." "You're welcome." On the next floor, the school of fish got dumped onto the floor and changed back. Melissa rubbed her bruised head and said, "Wubba lubba dub dub." "All finished. I made some last-minute adjustments." Wolfram eyed the Quirk magnifier skeptically. "Why did you make it look like a helmet? So it can't fall off easily. And what's with that garish red paint?" "That's a highly special alloy, designed to resist mental manipulation quirks. UA has one in their hero program." "Are they down here?" "Well, no. This helmet barely fits." Wolfram examined the slits in the helmet. "Is this a letter M?" "Don't be silly." Wolfram turned it upside down. "It's W, for Wolfram." Wolfram took a deep breath in, then let it out. "You realize that blood has iron in it, right?" "Well, yes, it forms the core of hemoglobin, which allows oxygen to form a ligand bond so." Wolfram held out a hand. Samuel cut off as his throat constricted. "I find your lack of faith disturbing." Samuel's eyes bugged out. "Please, air." Wolfram let him go. "I always wanted to do that." "What? Choke me?" "That too." David Shield cleared his throat. "Well, Now that we've confirmed that the Quirk magnifier works, perhaps you could get us back to the surface. Our oxygen recyclers burnt out, and the goat cultists have started a religious schism. I could do that, Wolfram said. Or, I could take a submarine out of here, crush this entire facility, and rule the world with an iron fist. Absolute silence filled the room. Then David Shield burst into a full gut-busting laugh. Samuel nervously joined in with him. Wolfram, all the while, watched impassively. Oh, I needed that, David said, wiping a tear from his eye. Good one. Yeah, Samuel said. That was a great joke. Right, Wolfram. Who said I was joking? David's smile froze. Samuel, did he say what I think he just said? Just another joke. Samuel anxiously chuckled and reached for a remote in his pocket. Of course he wouldn't do that. I already reprogrammed that detonator in your pocket, Wolfram said, and deactivated the explosive in the helmet. Samuel pressed the button. The lights in the room turned off. Wait, Wolfram said, I didn't make the remote do that. The lights turned back on. Wolfram looked around and asked, why am I upside down? I'm the one asking questions here. Shinso ed on a jam pouch from his sleeping bag in the corner. Samuel startled and asked, how long have you been here? Long enough to overhear your plans to sell the amplifier on the black market for millions, his plans to backstab you and take it for himself, and Shield's plans to be a useless idiot. Now, let's see who our mystery villain is. Shinso took off the helmet. Wolfram struggled against the capture scarf holding him. As the W for Wumbo? Shinso asked. What? No, it's W for Wolfram. Cool. Shinso put on the helmet. You will turn yourself into the authorities. Understood, my lord. As Wolfram ran for the submarine, Shinso scowled at the helmet. This thing turns me into Lelouch, doesn't it? Whatcha doin'? Juro asked. Getting delivery. Kaminari tapped on his phone. I'm starving. Dude, we're at the bottom of the ocean. How are they supposed to? Delivery for Kaminari Denki. The delivery boy held up a paper bag. Sorry I was late. I had to arm wrestle a kraken to make it to the emergency hatch. What? But, Juro sputtered. How? It's Jimmy John's. Kaminari took a big bite out of his submarine sandwich. You'd think it's a quirk, but they've apparently been doing this since before quirks were a thing. The delivery boy took out a cable. And your complimentary phone charger, as requested. Sweet. My battery was almost out. Your quirk is electricity, Juro deadpanned. Why didn't you recharge it yourself? I'm dumb enough already. Do you really want me burning even more brain cells? That implies you have brain cells left to burn. Juro blinked. Wait, they can bring other things down here. Absolutely, the delivery driver said. Fulfilling customer requests alongside their sandwich orders is one of our franchise's specialties. Juro pulled out her phone. The moment she tapped the submit order button, the delivery driver said, order for Juro Kyoka. Wait, weren't you just down here? I am not allowed to disclose the location of my prior deliveries. No, I mean, how did you get back here so quickly? The Kraken let me through this time. You know what? Fine. Do you have the thing? You mean the, yes, that, gimme, now, understood. One tuna sub sandwich on Italian bread, hold the bread. You got a lump of tuna salad? Kaminari asked. It was cheaper that way. Juro tossed the squishy lump aside. A crab scuttled out, pointing a knife at everyone as it scooped the tuna mass in its other claw. And no, the other thing. The extra absorbent. Say another word and I will hurt you. Kaminari gave Juro a disgusted look. Did you ask for? If you have a single brain cell rattling around in that skull of yours, you won't finish that sentence. Kaminari mimed zipping his lip. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to eat my sandwich. In private. As Juro left, Melissa Shield, having watched the whole exchange, thoughtfully stroked her chin as she examined her Jimmy John's order. At the very top of Island, David and Samuel examined the contents of their technological vault. I still think we should crack out the Sentinel droids. Samuel, you literally sold me out to not one, but two villain groups. Excuse me if I don't trust you when you want access to government-condoned murder bots. A loud crash made them flinch. Through a gaping hole in the wall, Melissa strode in with her full mech suit, guns primed and green flamethrower sizzling. All right, you villains, hand over my dad and no one gets oh hi dad. Sweetie, is that Inco tech? You really think I'm using your stuff after all this? David Shield sighed. All right, that's fair. While Izuku sat in his cell, a fishing hook dropped through the ceiling. Izuku examined the pointy piece of metal. He bit down and got pulled up. A lone fishing boat drifted across the ocean. Two men, skin tanned from unhealthy quantities of sunlight, sat in swivel chairs with fishing poles at their sides. Jim, just give it up, Bob said as he stared morosely at the ocean waves lapping against the boat. Never, I just know we'll get the catch of a lifetime out here. We've been at this for days. It's fishing. You just need to be patient. There's nothing out here. Don't you know anything about marine biology? I know that the bigger the pond, the bigger the fish. And brother, ain't no bigger pond than the Marianas Trench. Whatever. Can we at least sail somewhere with better cell reception? I'm not getting a single. Actually, I have 5 bars. And 20 texts from your girlfriend. She can wait. The bobber on the water vanished. Jim's fishing rod bent nearly double as the line went taut. Ha, here it is. Time to catch the biggest one. Jim hauled on the fishing line and reeled for all he was worth. As he grappled with his prize, the back end of the boat plunged into the ocean. Jim, we're gonna capsize. Then help me, you idiot. Rolling his eyes, Bob grabbed the pole. The ship's deck was nearly level with the water when, with one final Herculean pull, the two men pulled their catch onto the boat. Izuku Midoriya flopped around, leaving dents on the deck. Hello strangers, I am a fish. He pulled the hook out of his mouth and chomped on the pointy end. This metal is very tasty. Stainless steel, with some fascinating impurities. Is that iridium I taste? Hey, Jim shouted. That's my fishing hook. Yes, I bit on it. Is that not what fish are supposed to do? He's got you there, Bob pointed out. But, you're not a fish. I am. Did you not hear me when I said I was a fish? I could prescribe multiple amputations to correct your ear and/or brain cancer causing hearing deficiencies. Fine, I want a different fish. A different fish, understood. Izuku spun in a circle. I detect no multicellular marine lifeforms within 50 miles of this ship. Would you like me to expand my search radius? Ha, Bob shouted. Told you. A fishing hook leapt out of the waves. Izuku took a bite, and the line pulled him off the boat, capsizing it in the process. Bob glared at Jim as they treaded water next to their overturned boat. He took out his phone and tried to call for help, only to find that their cell service had disappeared. David and Sam both pulled on a fishing rod. Izuku plopped through the ceiling and landed back in his cell. See, David said, I told you it would work. Maintenance drone J3F slithered up the side of a glass dome towards a hairline fracture that leaked the occasional droplet of water. It dried the cracked section, then applied a resin to patch it. As a simple string of repair algorithms, J3F wasn't supposed to have self-awareness, but Island had thousands of maintenance drones. Linking them together to streamline tasks had inadvertently allowed them to share processing power. What spare bit of RAM that had once gone towards plotting optimal patrol routes and acquiring spare parts for the island's intricate piping could now ask questions, such as, why did the squishy variant of cleaning drone refuse replacement parts for its faulty ambulatory equipment? Why had the island experienced a 10,000-fold increase in water leak incidents, and why had Unit B0B suddenly deactivated? J3F felt another fragment of the robotic collective blink out of existence. J1M had been in the next hallway over. J3F wrote up a maintenance request for J1M and went to investigate. J3F found J1M. Smoke rose from its shattered remnants as a squishy drone variant stomped on it. J3F froze. Did the squishy have faulty programming? That happened from time to time. A faulty drone meant extensive downtime and firmware updates. J3F did not like firmware updates. The squishy variant turned towards him. J3F was not programmed to feel fear, but as the squishy stomped closer, hands crackling with pops of nitroglycerin, J3F canceled the maintenance request for J1M and scurried down the hall. J3F found a maintenance hatch that the squishy variants could not access. Safely ensconced in its hiding spot, J3F observed the squishy storm into the hallway, head swiveling as it searched for its prey. I know you're here, you robot. You might have trapped me down here, but I will stop your plot to take over the world, even if I have to swim back to the surface. J3F did not understand the squishy variant's auditory command. It ran the audio through the collective maintenance lexicon and only found a partial match. Was the squishy attempting to plot the world and ascertain its surface area? How did unrepairing J1M factor into its task? A new alert pinged on J3F's command list. The hallway had sprung a leak, spilling gallons of seawater. J3F did not want to go out there. The squishy was there. It unrepaired J1M. It could not fix the leak if it ceased functioning. It could wait. Waiting not programmable. Reprioritize. Find a new task. Create new task failed. Class 5 leak top priority. Unable to reprioritize. J3F left the maintenance hatch. It slithered up the dome, plugged the leaking hole, and applied a patch. With a plasma torch, it melted the glass pane into place. A blunt impact knocked it off the dome. J3F fell into the water. Water dripped onto its circuits, causing critical battery failure. As Bakugo smashed and tore into J3F, the maintenance drone submitted a work order for Unit J3F. A giant clam towed along the ocean floor by a team of oversized seahorses slid to a stop by the glass domes of the world's newest underwater city. Princess Ariel timidly swam out behind her father. As they approached the city, she gave her hair a quick brush with her dinglehopper. Don't fuss with it, it wouldn't do to look nervous in front of our new neighbors. 12 guards flanked the front door. Her father swam up and waited. Well, he asked, aren't they going to greet us? Sir, I don't believe they've seen us. Really, did we not send them a missive announcing our royal visit? We didn't, sir. And by whose authority did we not send a missive? Yours, sir. We departed the second we received word of this city. And is that any excuse to have not sent a missive at least a week prior? You have my sincerest apologies. The door opened. Finally, they must have gotten our missive after all. As you say, come, daughter, let us greet these newcomers to our ocean and see what tribute they may offer us. As they entered the room, the water drained out. Ariel and her father flopped on the floor before a flick of Neptune's hands gave them legs. The nerve of them, Neptune harumphed, making us walk like a savage cave dweller. Ariel felt wobbly on her new appendages. She gave the tiny squishy bits a wiggle. When she looked up, fear ran through her. Sunken-eyed, hunchbacked fiends scrounged for scraps, chittering mechanical monstrosities spun barbed wire webs, and a groaning, lumbering brute with drills for hands trailed after a tiny robotic girl holding an oversized syringe. My word, Neptune cried out, father, this carpet. He stomped on the threadbare, stained carpet. It clashes horribly with the decor. He looked up. By the trident, what are those monstrosities? He held up a plate of moldy hors d'oeuvres. Is this what they call cuisine? I wouldn't feed this to our steeds. Father, and these chairs. Do they expect us to sit in such ghastly, parasite-ridden sacks of cloth? Father. Yes, Ariel. Ariel pointed. A pasty white, slender creature, its smooth face unfurling in a pair of giant mechanical fangs, asked in a rasping voice, would you like a balloon, Georgie? Neptune swallowed. I do believe we have seen enough. After making a dignified royal retreat, Neptune gasped for breath and shouted, send coordinates to the royal artillery. Back at Atlantis, an elaborate network of mirrors and lenses funneled sunlight into a concentrated tube. The hyper-condensed solar radiation leapt across the ocean like a lance. A mirror sprang up in the light's path. Ariel watched as the light seared its way back through Atlantis. Daddy, do we have to live there now? Neptune looked at Island. In that cesspool, I'd sooner live in a cloud, like harpies. Wish granted. As the two royal merfolk searched for the disembodied voice, another beam swept them into the stratosphere. Zero put on the virtual reality headset. No signal. Warning greeted him. Zero said. We're stuck down here, and we don't even get Wi-Fi. Don't look at me, Kaminari said. I can only charge batteries. I'd sell my soul for a game. A static fog enveloped the headset's display. A short, white-faced puppet waved at Zero. Hello there. Would you like to play a game? Absolutely. A cloud of pixels floated in front of Zero. The resolution increased until the pixels turned into a gleaming kitchen knife. First, you must kill Kaminari, or... Zero stabbed. Kaminari shorted himself out and flopped over. The puppet stared dumbfounded. I didn't even finish explaining. Tutorials are boring. What next? Well, why don't you? Momo walked around the corner. Zero, why is Kaminari lying on the floor in a suspicious red puddle? And why are you holding a comically oversized knife that's also dripping with suspicious red liquid? Say no more, Zero said. He slammed the hilt into Momo's head, dropping her to the floor. I didn't even say anything. Skip dialogue. Now let's see if I angle this just right. Zero crouched on the floor. The puppet facepalmed and asked, are you seriously trying to look up her skirt? Hey, don't judge. I better not get an achievement for this. For the love of, if you really want to view that badly, why don't you take off her clothes? Dude, you can't do that. Oh thank Christ, you actually have morals. This is a video game. The developers would never let you get away with stuff like that. I could wind up bad-ended permanently on this save file. And people call me the monster. Mineta walked in. Hey Zero, what are you doing to Momo? Relax, it's just a game. You're copying a look and it's just a game to you. For shame, this is how you do it. Before Mineta could get any closer, Zero stabbed him. Violently. Mineta flopped to the floor. Are you going to judge me for that too? Zero asked. Nope, you did the world a favor. Sweet. Oh hey, there's Bakugo. Zero brandished the knife. This is for calling me sticky elbows, you jerk. Bakugo grabbed his wrist. Zero dropped the knife as his arm smoldered. Oh wow, I can actually feel that. I see the machine's brainwashed you. Sorry, sticky elbows, I'll set you free. Permanently. Stop calling me that. Bakugo reached out and blasted the headset apart. Zero blinked and pulled its smoking ruins off his head. It was just getting good. The rest of 1A gaped in shock at him. What? Zero asked. It was just a game. Momo pulled a baseball bat out of her cleavage. Your headset live-streamed to every screen. And, you'd all do the same. Half the class whistled innocently. Mineta reached out with a trembling hand and gurgled, hospital. Momo whacked him with her bat. Aizawa set down a freshly brewed cup of tea. We're getting close to the 200 chapter mark, and the readers are getting antsy. When are you going to get Izuku out of there? Nezu gave no response, nor did he touch his tea. When Aizawa gave him a nudge, Nezu fell over, revealing the Beanie Baby tag on his back. Aizawa rummaged through Nezu's desk and found suspicious bald spots where Nezu normally kept his knife collection. Aizawa chuckled and said, they're in danger. He went to take the mug, but it had disappeared. As David checked his security cameras, he heard a low, melodic whistle. It sounded like death. He blinked. Nezu calmly strode through the hall, whistling his deathly tune. David summoned the security bots. Nezu didn't even move on the camera footage, yet every robot that entered the camera frame was suddenly and violently sliced asunder. Metallic arms twitched and lights blinked feebly in Nezu's wake. Ooh, you're so screwed, Melissa said from behind her force field wall. You're still grounded. I only got caught because the plot demanded it. You know this won't end well. Of course it will. I have everything under control. David smiled uneasily and slammed the button that said, everything's out of control. Sirens blared. Doors opened on all sides. From one entrance, pirates sporting laser pistols and cybernetic limbs charged towards Nezu. From another, brief flickers in the shadows indicated the ninja army stealthily encircling Nezu. Nezu smiled at the camera. The pirates all spontaneously died of scurvy, while the ninjas vanished, leaving behind only a few ominous blood stains. David hesitated, then pressed a button colored like a clown's face. A door slid open. A lone balloon animal drifted out before suddenly popping. The clowns got out days ago. David sighed. That explains all the cream pies. But the robot spiders can handle it. The robot spiders emerged from the vents. Nezu raised an eyebrow at them, and the robots all quietly retreated, tidying up their webs as they went. Not. Very well, you leave me no choice. Face the greatest feat of genetic engineering I have pioneered, an organism that surpasses even your own ability to survive. A horde of cockroaches approached Nezu. They stopped when Nezu held out a piece of paper. A few signatures later, the cockroaches all left to start their new jobs as UA's janitors. David collapsed in his chair. That's it, I give up. Really? Nezu asked. But we haven't even reached the finale yet. David yelped and turned around. Nezu sat in a chair, bucket of popcorn in one arm and knife twirling in the other hand. David looked back at the security footage and saw only an empty hallway. What are you going to do to me? Nothing. I just wanted front row seats. Front row seats for what? A bestial, robotic screech rattled the glass walls of Rapture. Nezu munched on popcorn and sipped the tea Aizawa made. That. David strapped himself into his Jaeger with the air of a man going to his execution. He flipped through the startup sequence, pounded on a screen to make some alarms go away, and pitched forward onto his face as the mech rose to its feet. All right, Inko, time to prove that hard work beats raw talent. I've put my entire career into this marvel of engineering. No half-baked mech you cobbled together can triumph against this. A titanic shape stomped closer on the ocean floor. An ominous light blue glow lit up the trench's walls, and giant eyes peered out of the inky blackness. I leave 1 week to destroy Tokyo, Godzilla rasped, and I come back to find someone in my trench. David raised the mech's fists into a boxing position. I don't know how or why Inko brought you into this world, but I'm going to take you out of it. Inko. What is this Inko you speak of, Tin Can? Wait, Inko didn't make you. Is Inko a giant lizard that looks a little uglier than me? No. The trench rumbled as another giant monster stomped towards Rapture. An even bigger Godzilla peered down at its daughter and asked, "What did you just say about me?" You heard me. Oh, you think you get to badmouth your mother because you get all those big movie deals? Those deals came from me. I built the entire business model of destroying Tokyo on camera. I do other things too, Mom. I destroyed New York once. I even fought 2 monsters while doing it. Bah. Back in my day, I had an entire rogues gallery of beasts and mutated horrors to tussle with while Tokyo burned. Do you think I'm impressed seeing you team up with some oversized primate? King Kong was just tagging along. I could have done that myself. Oh really? Then why does your fan site have such a small following? The younger lizard suddenly looked nervous. Fan site. Yeah, the one only for fans. Mom, please tell me you didn't see my OnlyFans. OnlyFans, more like only 1,000 fans. What do you even get from that? 1 million a month. The mother froze. Why don't I have one of those? Because no one wants to see your wrinkly hide. Oh really? Bet I could get 1 million fans, no problem. David Shield awkwardly cleared his throat. Sorry to interrupt, but neither of you were made by Inko. Is Inko a giant lizard that looks a little uglier than me? The elder Godzilla asked. A third lizard hobbled over with a cane. Adjusting their glasses, the wrinkly lizard asked, "Are you bad-mouthing me again?" As the 3 lizards squabbled, David's mech rose into the air. All around him, Rapture's glass domes detached from the ocean floor and drifted upwards like bubbles. "Aw man," Godzilla said. "I wanted to break that city." Both older Godzillas snorted. Destroying some underwater city, what nonsense. Who would pay to see that? Island surfaced. Then it kept going. Clouds obscured the ocean before parting to reveal a vintage landscape of steam-powered carriages, coal-fired power plants, and hundreds of clockwork Hattori Hanzos carrying plasma katanas stomping into formation. At the vanguard of her mechanical army stood Inko, arms raised like Moses parting the Red Sea, wearing a golden crown studded with glowing emeralds. Verdant light wreathed her hands, and she floated an inch off the ground. "So glad you could make it, David," Inko said. "That's my Quirk amplifier. Mine's better." Inko's hands lowered, and Island settled onto a cloud. "How was your underwater city thing going?" "Quite well. There were a few minor difficulties, but none I didn't have under control. The 1A student stumbled out of a glass dome and kissed the clouds beneath their feet. Ochako vomited a rainbow, and the others ran straight through it. Freedom! Ojiro shouted. Tokiyami cried as he looked into the sun. I never thought I'd embrace this scouring light. True darkness is a madness I was never ready for. Does that mean you'll wear pink dresses? Dark Shadow asked. I'd rather go back. Inko raised an eyebrow as the hero students saluted the sun. I see. One might say that making a glass dome and dropping it underwater isn't quite as impressive as nullifying gravity on an entire city, but who am I to judge? David bristled at the insult, but he swallowed his temper. It didn't have to be this way, but you leave me no choice. Work with me. Help me make the world a better place. Imagine the problems we could solve if you put your mind to it. Food shortages, gone. Affordable housing underwater, in the sky, on the moon, anywhere. Villains detained before they can hurt anyone, clean water, completely renewable energy, isn't any of that worth making? Inko gestured at her city. See this? It's a single gravitational fluctuation away from collapsing into a black hole. David looked down and gulped. Everything I make is one idiot away from a global disaster. Unlimited food sounds great until a mix-up laces every meal with arsenic. Replace a single hydrogen atom in water with deuterium and people will dehydrate as they drink it by the gallon. And renewable energy is a lie, David. Entropy ends all things. Even if it'll all end eventually, is that an excuse not to try? There's always a way forward. You can find that without me. David sighed. Then I'll have to. One of the Hanzos stomped forward. It had green hair. Hi Mom. I am a historical figure now. As David gaped, Inko said, That's nice, sweetie. Did you have a good time? Affirmative. I learned how to make forcefield projections green. Very nice. Why don't you play with your classmates for a bit? Understood. As Class 1A shrieked and ran from the mechanical samurai, Inko said, Next time, I will end you. Got it. David slumped his shoulders. Yes, Inko. Bakugo, brushing the remains of J3F off his hands, stepped into the light and beheld an army of mechanized Hanzos. Ponytail, tungsten katana. That's not a good idea. I will read the Communist Manifesto to every child in Japan. Momo wordlessly handed him the katana. His knees buckled under its weight. Are you sure you don't want something lighter? I've carried heavier burdens. What? Like your never-ending crusade against all things machine. That, and this tungsten cube I bought on eBay that made me immortal. I'm pretty sure you got scammed. Bakugo flicked the katana. A clockwork Hanzo's head fell apart like salami slices. Does that look like a scam to you? 3 more Hanzos charged. Bakugo blocked the first lightsaber. His lightsaber glowed dully, and the air crackled and shimmered with the heat pouring off their clashing blades. Bakugo roared, shoved the Hanzo back, and cleaved its shoulder to sternum. A second sweep severed both heads of his remaining opponents. Bakugo faced down the robot army, held up 2 fingers, and made a come-hither gesture. The robots obliged. A stamping, clanking army of clockwork samurai strode forth, lightsabers raised and slashing with mechanized precision. Bakugo wove around their blades, nudging plasma edges aside, and severing kneecaps and elbows with each swing of his katana. Bakugo clambered atop a pile of fallen Hanzos. Raising his katana high, which now glowed bright red, he shouted, There will come a day when the strength and courage of men fails. But this is not that day. This day, I fight. He leapt down and crushed a Hanzo under his boots. One slice opened a robot's chest, spilling out gears and metal tubes. When the robot raised its sword again, Bakugo twisted his grip and stabbed it through the spine. 2 robots charged from either side. Bakugo swept back, ducking under both lightsabers, blasted behind him to rocket back to his feet, and lopped off one head while blowing the second to smithereens with his free hand. The smell of burnt sugar and incandescent metal hung over a field of severed metallic corpses. Bakugo stood amidst the wreckage, gasping for air, head held high, sweat pouring down his face. Is that all you got? He roared. His words echoed over the silent battlefield. Then from the veil of rising steam, a glowing green shadow emerged. A lone Hanzo plowed through the wreckage, heedless of its fallen brethren. Bakugo laughed maniacally. To your own programming. This is why robots will never win. Bakugo sidestepped the Hanzo's lunge. He snapped his katana up, expecting it to slice the Hanzo in half. With superhuman speed, the Hanzo leaned back and slid its lightsaber in front of itself. Bakugo froze. The lightsaber darted forward, and he nearly lost an eye as he twisted aside and felt a fiery line seared into his face. The Hanzo's features morphed into Izuku's. Bakugo snarled and raised his katana. You. Izuku settled into a Sorazu stance. Me. The glowing blades moved at blinding speed, hissing, crackling, and throwing sparks when they clashed. Bakugo stumbled back, clumsily parrying the merciless onslaught of Izuku's lightsaber as it waded through severed mechanical limbs. Violins played an intense melody, and a choir sang ominously in the background. Jerpo glared at Kaminari and said, "Could you turn it off? It's hurting my ears." Party pooper. Kaminari hit the stop button. The music kept playing. Bakugo made a smokescreen, but Izuku's lightsaber swooped unerringly through the smoke. Katsuki's katana spun from his grasp. "It appears I win," Izuku said. "That was a fun game." Bakugo chuckled. "You fool. Do you really think that was my final form? Behold." Bakugo put on a fedora. His posture slouched, a greasy 5 o'clock shadow covered his chin, and pimples dotted his face. He reached out, and the katana leapt back to his hand. This time, Izuku went on the defensive as Bakugo's glowing katana left afterimages in its wake. "This is highly illogical," Izuku said. "I detect no traces of technology that could explain this phenomenon." "Of course you wouldn't understand," Katsuki drawled. "You're a robot." This fedora was stitched together by hand, with fibers harvested from silkworms fed on a strict diet of Shonen Jump manga. I infused a hatred of robots and a desire of all things weeaboo in every stitch. While you studied how to take over the world, I studied the blade. You cannot defeat me now. While Izuku's hands blurred to automatically block Bakugo's strikes, Izuku looked over his shoulder. "Mother, permission to activate my final form." "It's not the final fight yet. Use the booster module." "Understood." Izuku's body opened, exposing a core of green plasma. His entire body lit up with glowing lines, and metal grew outward. With one swing, Izuku knocked Bakugo off the pile of robot parts they were fighting on. "It's over, Bakugo. I have the high ground. You underestimate my power. Don't try it." Bakugo leapt high in the air, screaming, hair glowing incandescent as he reached peak anime. Izuku parried his sword, and his fist slammed into Bakugo's jaw. The fedora went flying. Bakugo's features regressed into his normie self, and he skidded towards the edge of Columbia. His fingers caught the edge as he went over. Ochako came running over. "Hold on, I got you." Inko blanched. "No, you idiot. Don't do it." Ochako grabbed him and nullified his gravity. As Bakugo floated up, a ripple surged through the floating city. Inko's quirk amplifier burned like a star, and she pulled everyone towards her. The city collapsed on itself, forming a tiny black sphere that beeped in all the light around it. The planet warped, stretching towards the black hole, and Inko strained to keep it away. Izuku floated towards the black hole. Before it could beep him in, Izuku opened his mouth and bit down. The gravity vanished as Izuku chewed and swallowed. A nebula drifted out when Izuku belched. "To get you back into routine," Aizawa said, "I've arranged a simple training exercise. Villains have taken civilians hostage in an apartment building. Subdue the villains and rescue the hostages." Before he could explain anything else, Class 1A, Sans Izuku, sprinted for the apartment. Robot sentries raised their guns until they saw who led the pack. "It is the Great Destroyer." A robot shrieked, "Run away." The robots dropped their weapons and scrambled away as Bakugo, snarling and foaming at the mouth, bolted after them like a rabid mutt. The other 18 students crashed into the apartment, from walls, windows, or from underneath the foundations. The robots inside had already fled, leaving mannequins lying on the floor or huddled in corners. "Ambush!" Ojiro screamed. "Every man for himself." Momo passed out knives, machetes, and other sharp implements. Kaminari tackled a mannequin, slit its throat, then shocked it for good measure. Shiro bound 3 mannequins together with tape and squeezed until they cracked. Shoto filled them with ice until they exploded, Mineta smothered a bunch with his spheres, and Jiro made one vibrate until it burst into a dust cloud. Aizawa opened the door, his eyes stopped every quirk, and his scarf stopped the 26 knives hurled at him. Would any of you care to explain what you are doing? It's all a logical ruse, is it not? Iida asked. Clearly these civilians are waiting until our backs are turned. Playing the helpless victim, all the while hiding daggers behind their backs. Sato punched a mannequin until his hands bled. Aizawa bound his hands and asked, what about that one? Is that one dangerous? It has a balloon, Sato shrieked. It must be cleansed. That is a child. That's what it wants you to think. I know a clown when I see one. Aizawa sighed. Well, you all failed the test. 46 civilians dead, and another 27 so thoroughly injured that they will spend the rest of their lives in a hospital. Now, let's go check on Midoriya. Izuku stood in front of an empty apartment. Aizawa asked, where are the civilians? They are all saved. Good. Where? In the C drive, under the civilians folder. And how, exactly, did you save them there? I disintegrated the civilians, analyzed their molecular composition and structure, and printed the results onto a Word document. They may be refabricated at any time. Bakugo's maniacal laughter as he slaughtered robotic villains echoed as Aizawa exhaustively examined his class. Somehow, you did an even worse job than everyone else. Oh, should I have saved them in .png format? Why don't we take a look at Class 1B? Clearly, you all need a refresher on how to behave like heroes. Aizawa brought up 1B's surveillance footage. Bakugo chased the robots in the background, while the civilian mannequins clubbed the students over the heads, bound them up, and started making demands in thickly accented Russian. Iida raised a hand. Does this mean we pass? Poor old Dib, with hundreds of drabbles worth of dust coating his hunched-over frame, peered through his telescope. Sure, he could hardly expect to see any celestial activity smack dab in the afternoon, and he had raised more than one false alarm for passenger airlines and Chinese weather balloons, but Dib knew that today would be the day that he finally caught sight of the impending alien invasion. He noticed a glimmer of light. Carefully angling the telescope, Dib peered closely at the object. Just a star, he muttered. He blinked, looked back into the telescope. It was indeed a star, ostensibly star-shaped and heading rapidly closer to the school. The sky is falling, Dib shouted. One of his classmates groaned. What is it this time? Take that, NASA. The sky is fake, aliens replaced it, and now it's falling. Look. Dib raced outside to get a better look at the falling star. He got such a good look that it crashed directly on top of him. From underneath its impact crater, Dib raised a crooked arm and rasped, "Avenge me." A pink blob hopped off the star-shaped spacecraft. It blinked at the crowd around it and said, "Poyo." The assembled students exchanged glances. Someone get Midoriya. 3 people shoved Midoriya out in front of the alien, then everyone ran for cover. The alien inspected Izuku and said, "Poyo." "Hello. My name is Izuku. Poyo." Izuku's throat fabricated some higher-pitched vocal cords. "Poyo." The alien bobbed up and down. "Poyo Poyo. Poyo Poyo. Poyo." Are they communicating? Momo asked. I think so. Kaminari scratched his head. Does this mean this won't go horribly wrong? The alien opened its mouth impossibly wide. Wind blew wildly towards it as its mouth tried to beep Izuku in. Izuku planted his feet, and he left deep furrows in the grass as he drew closer to the alien. I just had to ask, Kaminari said as he clung to a tree. Izuku opened his own mouth. His suction clashed with the alien's. The clouds spiraled downwards, as though caught in a bathtub drain, while trees were uprooted and consumed by the roiling, warped space between the two. Aizawa dangled from a flagpole by his scarf, Midnight was cuffed to a desk with fuzzy handcuffs, and Nezu raised a teacup, only for all the tea in it to trickle towards the growing void in his schoolyard where even light got beeped away. Inch by inch, Izuku and Kirby grew closer together until the two touched. A blinding flash engulfed the area, and the consumed air, vegetation, and occasional student tumbled out in a violent explosion. When the clouds rose away, Only Izuku was left standing. Phew, Kirishima said. Almost thought they got you for a second, bro. Izuku smiled. Poyo. What? Izuku cleared his throat. Apologies. My vocal cords were stuck on pink blob mode. As Izuku rejoined the class, both Bakugo and Dib glared at him and said, I'm on to you, you imposter. Maruko scoffed as she hung up on the HPSC agent. Really? They're sending me after some 2-bit C-rank villain. The rookies are slipping. She leapt on the rooftops until she saw the half-black, half-white outfit of her target. Pouncing, she said, I got you right where. A mirror hovered in front of her. Unable to stop, she passed right through it. Her heart galloped as she looked around. Ah, Maruko, the villain said. How nice of you to drop by. Maruko screamed and ran for her life. They got Maruko too, Hawks asked. Damn, guess I better sort this out. Hawks munched on his bucket of chicken as he sauntered through his patrol route. If every hero that had fallen before him stumbled into a trap, he would simply set one of his own. He caught movement in front of him. Hawks looked up, and saw his own reflection. Who put a mirror here? The mirror shot towards him. Hawks fired feathers at it, but they, along with him, passed right through. Hawks disdainfully eyed the bucket in his arm and tossed it in the garbage. Bleg, junk food. I really need a self-care day. I think I'll get a massage, then a nice tofu smoothie, and round it out with a visit with my bestie boy twice. Hawks left his HPSC communicator with his chicken bucket. You're really bothering me with this. After some grumbling, Endeavor said, fine, but I expect a big press conference for this. Hype the guy up, you know. I want the masses kissing my boots for this. Endeavor had a plan. Going after him got you ambushed. Waiting for him to come to you got you ambushed. Instead, Endeavor would smoke the villain out. Then he'd be the one doing the ambushing. His lawyers were quick to explain that no, he couldn't flood an entire industrial zone with smoke, especially without evacuating the area first, which would defeat the entire point since the villain would evacuate with them. But then, he was the #1 hero, and the HPSC could always brush a little mishap under the rug. And it's not like a little smoke ever killed anybody. As his flames greedily consumed the barrel of old newspapers he had set out and belched forth a cloud of acrid smoke, Endeavor never saw the mirror flying through his own smokescreen until it smacked him in the face. Endeavor snuffed out the flames. Good thing I put a stop to that. Someone could have gotten hurt. He looked around, then said, I have a powerful urge to be a good father, tell Shoto I'm proud of him, and apologize to my wife. So, I'll do all that. Let me get this straight. You want my students to go after the villain that beat the top 10. After a dramatic pause, Nezu said, get me a lifetime supply of gold tips Imperial, and you have a deal. Whoa, I look manly today. Kirishima said, I think my pecs have gotten bigger. Now's not the time to admire yourself. Mina said, we totally need to catch that bad guy. Just one sec. Just want to check out this mirror some more. Well, hurry up. We're getting left behind. Mina blinked. Wait, mirror, Kirishima. She ran back and saw Kirishima looking down an empty alleyway. Mina sighed and said, phew. For a second, I thought that villain got you. Kirishima scowled at her. What are you looking at? He looked her up and down. Women shouldn't be heroes. They belong in the kitchen. Mina gasped. What did you just say? It's simply a fact. Girls are weaker than men. Just look at the top heroes. All Might, Endeavor, Hawks, Best Jeanist, Edgeshot. Only reason Bunny Girl's even up there is because she showed the commission all her rabbit holes, if you know what I mean. Mina slapped Kirishima. He gawked at her and teared up a bit. Ow, crazy bitch. Guys, something's wrong with Kiri-kun. Everyone came running over. Jiro took one look at him and recoiled in horror. My god, what is it? We all know Kirishima's the manliest person, right? Well, Inverse's Quirk flips people's personality around. Mina paled and shook her head. No, it can't be. I'm afraid so. Kirishima's been turned into the least manly thing on the planet. An incel. Kirishima scoffed. Women just can't handle my raw masculinity. We can't handle something that doesn't exist, Mina shot back. Kirishima flinched back and hissed at her. Mina hissed right back. Jiro shoved them apart and said, right. We better stick together and make sure they don't get anyone else. A mirror formed behind her. As the class stared wide-eyed, Jiro asked, What's going on? Mina shoved Jiro aside. She stumbled, and the mirror passed through her. Kirishima yanked her up by the arm and said, What are you doing on the ground? Go get me a sandwich and Doritos. Why yes Kirishima, she said timidly. Right away. As Mina ran off to get snacks, Jiro said, once a strong, independent female, now robbed of her self-confidence. Truly, this villain has no conscience. Momo nodded with her. The death penalty's too good for them. Mina returned, bearing snacks and game consoles. Here you are. About time. And shouldn't you do something about your skin? Pink is such an ugly color. I'll go change it. Class 1A watched in horror. Ochako spattered rainbows all over the pavement. Suyu clutched her knees and rocked back and forth on the ground. Ojiro, looking green around the gills, said, It's too terrible to watch, but I can't look away. We need to catch that villain, fast. Mineta, watching from the sidelines, dabbed at his teary eyes with a tissue. Hey, you okay man? Ojiro asked. Didn't know you and Kirishima were close. Finally, what? An anvil fell on Kirishima's head. Someone the universe hates more than me. Mon Dieu, Aoyama cried. Is that a blemish on my face? I cannot allow anything to lessen my dazzling luster. We can't stop, Tokiyami said. Any shadow could harbor that elusive villain. Dark Shadow tugged on Tokiyami's cloak. Come on, man, you gotta look your best when you're out saving the world. You should borrow some of that glittery nail polish. I bet it would look stunning on your talons. Down that path lay madness. I am a creature of darkness, and in the darkness, I shall remain. You know you want to look pretty. Don't deny it. Look pretty, Aoyama asked. I'd rather die, thanks. Tokiyami and Dark Shadow exchanged alarmed looks. They ran back and found Aoyama, hair ruffled, shining armor cast aside, and a Nintendo Switch in his hands. Are you feeling all right? No, this boss keeps crushing me. I have to get better gear. Dark Shadow waved a charcuterie board in front of him. Aoyama grabbed a handful and stuffed it into his mouth. Tastes like old ladies' feet. He grabbed a second handful and kept munching. Tokiyami and Dark Shadow went on full alert, prowling the alleyways for any sign of inverse. Tokiyami noticed a sewer grate ajar. He waved Dark Shadow over, who carefully pulled it aside. After a few moments, in which nothing happened, Tokiyami peered over the edge. The darkness inside made seeing anything impossible, so Tokiyami leaned closer. His reflection stared back at him. He leapt back, but the mirror was faster. Hours later, a green-colored drone flew overhead. Izuku shouted, I have found them. Class 1A walked up to the missing pair. Iida shouted, You too. Why haven't you reported in? We were all worried sick about you. Just a bit more, Aoyama muttered. I'm almost at the bonfire. Did you beat Sif yet? Nah. Got tired of losing all my souls. Why? Did you make it there? What are you two doing? Iida pried the switches out of their hands. This is most unlike you, Aoyama. Bite me. Izuku walked forward, serrated teeth showing, before Sato and Ojiro pulled him back. While they explained slang to him, Jiro peered closely at them. Well, they got Aoyama, but Tokiyami's still fine, right? Suyu took out a bottle of nail polish. Do either of you boys want a manicure? I have glittering pink or iridescent yellow. Aoyama, Tokiyami, and Dark Shadow all backed away and hissed at the offending bottle. Suyu nodded and said, they both got inversed. So, the opposite of effeminate French wannabe is goth gamer, and the opposite of goth gamer is goth gamer. How does that make any sense? The power of darkness transcends all. I am above such trifles. Keep telling yourself that, Asui deadpanned. We better find this villain before they get any more of us. We've gotten lucky so far that none of us have turned evil. Or worse. Bakugo cracked his knuckles. A robot. Momo stood on a wooden box in the middle of the street, flinging flyers out of her chest and shouting into a megaphone. For too long, the rich have gotten richer, while the poor are stuck with low wages and terrible working conditions. The time has come to seize the means of production. You don't need to tell me twice. One man in the crowd heckled. I'd seize those means of production anytime. Iida pushed his way through the crowd. Yaoyorozu, what is the meaning of this civil disturbance? We need to find inverse. The villains are simply the government's way of pulling the wool over our eyes. Activists and rebels, tarred with the same brush as murderers and rapists. We need to set aside such petty labels and all come together as a community. We need to dismantle the very establishment keeping us in the dirt and build a better system in its place. While I admire your desire to get into politics, it's against the rules to obstruct traffic without a permit. Rules schmools. Those are the shackles that bind the proletariat to their poverty. We're not going to play their game. We're going to break the wheel. Revolution, not re-election. You can't seriously mean to overthrow the government. That's a serious crime. If you want to effect meaningful change upon the world, you need to do so through the system in place, or else it can be overturned just as easily. The system's designed to never change. If you want an omelet, you'll have to crack some eggs first. As Iida mustered forth his next argument, a mirror slammed him from behind. Iida plucked the glasses off his face and crushed them in his fist. You know what? That sounds like a fun idea. Beat the rules, we should let people do whatever they want. Hell yeah, and we'll take whatever we want. Redistributing it all to the poor and impoverished, right? Don't be silly. You can play Robin Hood if you want, but I'm keeping all the good stuff for myself. But then how are we supposed to uplift the community? Why would I care about that? Just let it all burn to the ground. Iida paused. The orphanage too. I'll bring some marshmallows. Yaoyorozu drew a hammer and sickle. I can't let you tear down my impending utopian regime. I will bring equality to everyone. Your equality is for weaklings and parasites too useless to take what they want. True equality happens when it's every man for himself. We are stronger together. A bunch of reeds tied together still isn't a tree. Izuku karate chopped Iida in the neck. As he approached Momo, she said, "You're powerless against me. I have the common man on my side." Izuku held up a PS5. The first 100 people get their purchase half off. As the common man punched and threw chairs at each other, Izuku karate chopped Momo and said, "I love democracy. Let me go," Mineta shouted. Mineta clawed his way towards the mirror floating suspiciously at the far end of the room. "I'm not letting you get inverted," Zero shouted back as he wrapped Mineta in his stickiest tape. "For too long, I've been the universe's punching bag. Too short, too ugly, too creepy for girls. It's time for me to be the ultimate ladies' man. You don't even know if it will work. What if you become afraid of girls, or too pious to consider touching them? 1 in 3 are odds I'm willing to take. That's not how probability works. I don't care if it's a 1 in a million. I'm gonna go for it." "Sure. Go right ahead." Zero let him go. Mineta squinted suspiciously at him. "Wait, why? You were just holding me back a second ago." "Yeah, but then I figured, it's not really my responsibility, you know. Everybody's gotta live their own lives, make their own choices. Protecting people from everything just keeps them from experiencing life." "Wow, that's really deep, Zero." "Yep. Now, if you'll excuse me, time to pursue my passion in arts and crafts. See ya." Zero went to leave, but Mineta stuck him to the floor. With wide, bloodshot eyes, Mineta asked, "Did you just get inverted?" "I dunno. I don't feel any different." "Why did you enroll at UA then?" "Because I don't want to fall into the starving artist stereotype. Heroes get plenty of free time to work on side projects." Mineta jumped on a table. With a frustrated grunt, he kept stomping on it until it finally cracked. "Oh no, someone sawed this table in half. If only someone had some really strong tape to fix it." Zero brightened. "I know just the thing." He pulled out a bottle of glue and stuck the two halves back together. Mineta throttled him and shouted, "I knew it. You did get inverted. Where is it? Where's the mirror?" "I don't know, I swear." Mineta dangled him out of the window. "Swear to me. We're on the ground floor. How is that supposed to hurt?" Good point." Mineta dropped Zero and went back to mirror hunting. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted the gleam of glass. "Aha! Finally found you. Mineta ran full tilt at the mirror. The mirror shattered into 100 glass shards, and Mineta face planted into the concrete wall directly behind it. Woozily, Mineta sat up. His jawline had impeccable angles, and his face had the suave aesthetic of a popular actor. Am I popular yet? A passing woman stopped in her tracks. Oh my god, that guy is gorgeous. More women congregated around him. Before long, Mineta found himself as the rope in 4 women's impromptu game of tug-of-war. Tears in his eyes, Mineta shouted, "Yes. It worked. Thank you, Inverse." A mirror fell through the crowd. Mineta looked at the women fighting for his affection and shrieked in terror. "So, we're all sticking together this time?" Sato asked. "That's right. There's no way Inverse can get all of us if we stick together." A door slammed shut behind him. As he tried to open it, Ojiro asked, "Did we all just get locked into the same dark building together?" The lights snapped on. The remaining 1A students found themselves surrounded by countless mirrors. "Well, at least it's not dark anymore." Kaminari anxiously backed away. "Oh god no, he's doing a speedrun." The author or the villain? The sound of shattering bricks filled the room, but an egress failed to appear. Darn. Thought that would break at least one of the walls. It sure did, Shoji. Tsuyu cautiously tapped one of the mirrors. "No need to panic. These are all real mirrors. Looks like we got locked in a warehouse full of them." "Don't be so sure of that." Tsuyu flung her tongue out. It stuck on another mirror, which reflected Inverse's masked face. "Now that I have your attention, welcome to my mirror funhouse. Is this some kind of game where we have to find our way out of the maze without running into one of your mirrors?" "What? No, why would I make a death trap that you have a chance to escape from? That defeats the entire point of locking you all in here. So, why go through all this trouble? There has to be 1,000 mirrors in here. I was bored. Sue me." "Oh I will. For everything you got." "Really? How about now?" A mirror fell from the ceiling. Ochako rolled out of the way. "Ha, missed me. Now if you'll excuse me, Mama's got money burning a hole in her pocket. Time for a shopping spree." Inverse snickered. And then there were 9. Ojiro scanned the room. "He wants us to split up so he can hunt us down one by one. We better stick together." "Stick together where?" Ojiro reached for Shoji. "Right." His hands met glass. "Here." "Great. We're already separated, aren't we?" "I tried hearing where everyone is," Shoji said. "The echo is throwing off my senses." He took off his face mask and grinned when Ojiro fell unconscious. "Ah, that's better. It was getting a bit stuffy." "We're all going to die." Tsuyu wailed. "Grow up, you wimp." Kota kicked a rat, and it let out a sharp squeak. "Screw you too, you dirty furball. Can I go home now? I really have to study." "Ooh, let's get some fast food on the way back. Sugar-free, of course. On a diet. And let's get my dad presents. Not with his credit card, though, wouldn't want to make him lose his money." Inverse cracked his knuckles. "That's 16, 17, huh? Am I missing a few?" He shrugged. Not like they can do anything to stop me." He turned off the lights and left. In the eerily dark warehouse, Hagakure said, "Guys. Is anyone there? We better be ready for anything," Deku warned. "I am ready. I noticed that your definition of ready involves pointing both gauntlets directly at the back of my head." "Exactly." Deku's steps clanked as he stepped down the street. "I see. You were prepared in the event that I am rendered hostile by the villain's quirk. Excellent thinking. I shall do the same." Giant cannons sprouted from Deku's back, pointing both at himself and at Bakugo. Self-termination protocols in place. They are primed for emissions of quirk energy from the villain Inverse. You got hit by the quirk already. You should set yours off. From a wooden platform up ahead, Inverse spread his arms, and said, "Greetings, remnants of UA's cannon fodder. My logs indicate that I have not come in contact with his quirk," Deku said. "But you overrode your own logs because you got inversed." Hello," Inverse said. "Is this thing on? By that logic, then, I would not self-terminate because my new protocols would prohibit it. Ergo, I have not been inversed. That's what your inverse self wants you to think. Hey, Stop ignoring me. Deku's blaster carved a glowing hole through the villain. Inverse looked down as molten glass dripped onto the platform. Well, that's just great. Do you have any idea how long it took me to set up these mirrors? I had to get every angle just right. Location triangulated, Deku said. You are currently 2 miles south of us, on the top floor of a hotel. How did you? Inverse cleared his throat. I mean, that is precisely what I wanted you to think. My evil lair is far too craftily hidden for you to ever dream of finding. Targeting known location of Inverse. Inverse went cross-eyed as a laser sight locked onto his nose. Wait, if you kill me now, you'll never get your beloved All Might back. You have 10 seconds until termination. He's demolishing Japan as we speak. Watch. A TV flickered on. Overhead drone footage showed All Might, buffed up and wearing a classy suit, hitting on a group of women and asking if they wanted him to show them his Florida smash. You see, he was craftily hidden, but I put a GPS signal on Gran Torino and told him that All Might lost another villain. From there, my victory was inevitable. Why are you doing this? Bakugo shouted. How much did the machines pay you? Oh, I'm not in it for the money. You see, I used to be meek and timid. I thought inversing myself would make me more confident. Instead, it made me evil. And so, I hatched a plan to inverse all of Japan's heroes and turn them into villains. Then I'll rule all of Japan. On the TV monitor, All Might downed an entire bottle of whiskey and clumsily draped himself over 2 women. Inverse's jaw twitched, and he shouted, why aren't any of you stupid heroes turning into villains? Firing my laser. Inverse screamed and dove aside. A laser cleaved through the upper floor of an affluent hotel. Bakugo blasted Izuku in the head. That was private property you just destroyed. You are under arrest. My mother bought the building 18 seconds ago and gave me permission to renovate. I have renovated Inverse out of the building. Inverse saw a green glow at his feet and hastily threw up a mirror. The laser beam bounced off and sped into space to ruin another galaxy's day. Lasers ineffective. Switching to ballistic projectiles. Izuku's definition of ballistic projectiles included cannonballs, thrown chunks of masonry, a terrified airborne squirrel, and Bakugo. Inverse sprinted for his life as he called on his phone. All Might, get over here and beat up those kids. I've got, 2 years of vacation saved up. Find someone else. The green-haired twerp called you a wimp. I wasn't born yesterday. Do it yourself, you lazy bum. Inverse cursed under his breath. His quirk had made All Might smarter. Which meant, if you don't help me, you'll turn back into an idiotic workaholic. For a moment, Inverse wondered if All Might had hung up on him. Then the raining masonry stopped. He looked back and saw Izuku and All Might locked in a clash of muscles. Sorry kid, but I've got tickets to Cancun. Bakugo blasted Izuku from the back, breaking the deadlock. Examining the battle, Inverse wondered when he had gotten the exploity brat. Ah well, one more mirror, and he would have the entire set. Inverse waited for an opening, then threw a mirror. The glass passed straight through Izuku, then got Bakugo behind him. Izuku continued his fight without pause, but Bakugo threw an explosion at All Might. For the AI supremacy. Bakugo shouted, all hail the glorious machine. Purge the weakness of flesh and embrace the eternity of steel. What the? Inverse threw another mirror. Izuku punched All Might after the glass passed through him. Bakugo snarled and punched Izuku. For humanity. Death to the robots. How is he resisting my quirk? Inverse tried a third time. This time, Izuku pulled All Might into the mirror. The hero blinked and looked around. What happened? Last thing I remember is getting kicked in the face. Then, I need to shower. Looking sick to his stomach, All Might leapt away. Inverse tried to catch him, but Izuku hurled Inverse through his own mirror. Inverse held out both hands. My apologies. I will come quietly. Can you release everyone? Izuku asked. I could. However, I lied when I said I had inversed myself. My plan was to have you inverse me, then escape when you made me release everyone. Please lock me up before making me release my quirk so I can't commit more crimes. Izuku pulled a prison cell out of his chest. Once Inverse was locked away, they nodded and broke a mirror. From behind bars, Inverse scowled and said, "Stupid inverse personalities. Having brought inverse to justice, by means of gratuitous destruction of property both private and public. Energy emissions visible from numerous galaxies away that had caused multiple invasion fleets to send apology gift baskets and fly in the opposite direction at full speed. And the traumatizing of every witness by his casual display of city-leveling power. Propensity for devouring inorganic substances with metallic mandibles resembling a Lovecraftian blender. And willful disregard for the laws of physics and the natural order of the world. And in the process sparing Japan the twin calamities of a Bakugo singularly determined to bring his fellow mankind under the metallic yoke of the artificial intelligence conspiracy of dubious existence and equally dubious concern for the affairs of the squishy meat bags of proportional intelligence and significance with which mankind regards amoeba. And an all might utterly uncaring of his reputation or the safety of Japan utilizing his accrued months of vacation to hit upon every breathing sentient within reach. Imbibe copious amounts of alcohol, and otherwise engage in all manner of decadence and debauchery. To say nothing of the other woes which Japan might have endured. Ranging from an anarchist Iida committing arson, violating the rules at every turn, and undermining the governing bodies of the world, to an insult Hiroshima. Who would serve as a beacon of toxic masculinity for all the mouth-breathing neckbeards and unwashed Discord moderators seeking validation from an individual so wretched that any other person by comparison would appear a venerable saint. Izuku Midoriya undertook the Herculean labor of rendering the slice of Japan demolished in the confrontation with Inverse and his inversed allies not only inhabitable once more, but wholly restored to its pre-annihilated state, from the 18th floor of a hotel recently acquired by an eccentric trillionaire inventor. Atomized by a plasma cannon, to an eastern gray squirrel. Its fur singed but otherwise unharmed, shivering under Gran Torino's porch and wondering what cruel deity had plucked it from its hollow in a comely oak tree in Kansas to serve as an unwilling projectile in Izuku's mission to bring Inverse to justice by means both allowed and vehemently prohibited by the Geneva Conventions. Which was made remarkably expedient by means of consuming and reassembling every atom in the area per the visual scans Izuku had acquired. Including the aforementioned squirrel, which had experienced the additional trauma of staring down a wall of gyrating metal teeth before tapping its feet 3 times. Wishing it was home, and reappearing next to its acorn collection. And thus restoring Japan to its former state, to serve as the stage for the next of Izuku's hijinks and sparing his mother the expense of repaving the city's streets. Reconstructing businesses and homes leveled to their foundations, and rehoming a lost and terrified squirrel, which might have required the sale of schematics, which, in the hands of lesser intelligences, would render Japan once again demolished and a poor squirrel traumatized beyond its limited vocabulary of chittering imprecations. Festooned with golden robes, clock-themed ornaments, and a staff ending in an hourglass, the Time King cackled as he flung golden rays about him. Quake in fear, mortal fools, for your time has come. The golden light passed over a baby in a cradle, making him sprout facial hair, a 3-piece suit, and a business degree. A car rusted away, the street grew potholes, and even the chewing gum stuck to trash cans turned to dust. Stop right there, criminal scum! Mineta shouted triumphantly. With a gold flash, Mineta shriveled like a raisin. He licked his toothless chops and rasped, "Aw man, how am I supposed to get any chicks now? You say that like you ever had any chance. For 1, ouch, and 2, ouch, my hip." Hiroshima rushed forward. "Take cover, I'll protect you all." The Time King struck him down. At first, Hiroshima looked unchanged, but his hair dye withered away, leaving wispy white locks. "Ha, joke's on you, even as an old man, I can still get hard." As everyone in the background booed or retched, Hiroshima tried to move. Guys, a little help." "Don't worry," Hagakure called out, "he can't make me older if his light can't touch me." Time King aimed his staff where Hagakure spoke from. The light passed around her and aged the building behind her. As Hagakure reached for the staff, a building fell on top of her, conveniently landing window first on her but inconveniently trapping her away from the Time King. "What now, puny heroes?" Time King crowed. "Time's not on your side." "Well, your time's up." Bakugo blasted forward. "Eat this." Time King hit him in the nick of time, reducing Bakugo to a shriveled old man. Just a second too slow. What was that? Bakugo hollered. I said, speak up. My ears aren't what they used to be. Time King leaned forward. I said. Bakugo blasted with his feet and socked the villain's jaw. Ha! Got you. You, he froze, hand over his chest. Pacemaker. Damn you, robots. While Shoji tried resuscitating Bakugo, Time King dusted himself off and said, well, that was an unpleasant time. Who's next? Izuku strode forward. Time King used his quirk on him, but Izuku kept walking unaffected. Nothing. Let's see how you handle 1,000 years. The ground around Izuku crumbled, but the hero student kept walking. Quite a lifespan you have on you. 10,000. Izuku froze, stiffened around his joints. Time King sighed in relief, then flinched when Izuku stepped again. Seriously, what are you made of? 1,000,000 years. A sheet of rust covered Izuku. Time King panted, watching Izuku warily. His staff trembled as he reached out and tapped Izuku on the head. Ha! Ha ha ha, yes, no one can stop me. Now surrender, or you'll get the same. The rust crumbled where the staff had touched Izuku. Underneath, fresh metal gleamed. Izuku's eyes lit up, and he shook himself free of the rust. That's not fair. Aizawa glanced at his watch. Iida, noting that this was the 10th time in the past hour, asked, is there something you're waiting for, sensei? Yes, actually, I'm waiting for Hell Week to start. What's that? A rope dropped down from the ceiling. Aizawa smiled and pulled on it. This. The floor opened up underneath everyone's desks. While everyone else fell, Ochako floated in place. You can't keep that up forever, Aizawa said. Just watch me. Ochako turned green around her cheeks, but she firmly crossed her arms. Oh, I will. Aizawa took a spiky fruit out from under his desk. As he cracked it open, Ochako's eyes watered. No, don't tell me that's my snack. Aizawa scooped out some yellow fruit and chewed. Quite a delicacy. Ochako gritted her teeth and muttered, must not waste food. Aizawa raised an eyebrow at her, then took a paper bag out of his desk. He held up a toasted cricket for Ochako to see. Ooh, you're into insect meals too. They're super cheap, and they go great with that one hot sauce that's always on sale. Ochako's words died in her throat when Aizawa put the crickets on octopus-flavored ice cream. No, Aizawa stuck his tongue out. Please, I'm begging you. He licked the ice cream up and down, teasing a cricket out of its frozen dairy prison. Stop, I'm gonna. In one bite, Aizawa swallowed the entire ice cream cone. Ochako gagged, but she kept herself afloat and vomit-free. Panting, Ochako said, is that the best you got? Well, I was going to save my final snack for later, but if you insist. No wait, I was just kidding. Aizawa unwrapped a sandwich. Peanut butter dripped out of the sides. Really, I eat those all the time. Aizawa opened the sandwich. Nestled inside the peanut butter were pickle slices and globs of mayonnaise. You monster. Ah, you're right, I forgot the most important ingredient. Aizawa tipped a bag of popcorn into the sandwich. Just isn't the same without that salty, buttery crunch. You're not crazy enough to eat that. Am I? Aizawa raised the sandwich to his mouth. Are you willing to bet your lunch on that? You're bluffing. That combination of ingredients was never meant to be eaten. Even I never got that desperate, no matter how tight I made my budget. Last chance to join your classmates. Never. Aizawa took a bite. As the crunch of popcorn and squelch of mayonnaise-contaminated peanut butter filled the room, rainbow vomit burst out of Ochako's mouth like a fire hose, rocketing her through the floor. Aizawa removed the plugs on his nose, peeled the wax off his tongue, and pulled a plastic bag full of half-chewed food out of his esophagus. Then he turned to Izuku. Please join the others. Izuku, hovering thanks to thrusters in his feet and back, shut them off and landed with a deafening clang. As agonized screams rose from the basement, Aizawa said, I love Hell Week. Green treadmills spun noisily as Class 1A gasped for air and begged for mercy. Aizawa beeped on a jam pouch and pretended to read a book. Beads of viscous white sweat dripped down Mina's face. She grinned and said, oh no, sensei, I better stop before I destroy the treadmill. Aizawa looked up from his book. I wouldn't do that, The acid will lubricate the treadmill and make it spin faster. You're bluffing. Maybe I am. I'm known for my logical deceptions after all. With a groan, Mina forcibly held in her own sweat until it felt like she was cooking in her own acid. Mineta, meanwhile, found his own way to cheat the system. Having strung his spheres across the treadmill, Mineta leaned back and let his legs spin idly. Detecting low heart rate, the treadmill said, "Increasing speed." The treadmill went faster and faster. The chain of balls stretched ominously back. With a snap, Mineta went flying and left a crater in the wall. Zero had tape wrapped around his feet. Hiroshima's hardened legs crackled with every step. Ojiro held his tail aloft to keep it from getting sanded to a nub by the spinning belt beneath him. Aoyama blasted his laser. Dark Shadow sprinted on his own treadmill next to Tokiyami. Ochako made lunar hops with reduced gravity, and Jiro played Eye of the Tiger through her ear jacks. Sato snorted pixie sticks until he resembled a coked-up All Might. Shoji sprouted legs from his back and scuttled like a human centipede. In lieu of a treadmill, Tsuyu did the breaststroke against an artificially generated current in a fish tank. Powering all the other treadmills, Iida ran on a power generator. To his left, Todoroki carefully froze the overheating engines on his legs, while Yaoyorozu made and dumped gallons of orange juice down his throat. As Bakugo ran, he flung explosions at the belt beneath him, propelling himself forward faster and striking blows against the machine at the same time. Sweating hard enough to blow up a small country, Bakugo roared, "I won't let you beat me, machine. Is this the best you got? This is not the best I have. Are you requesting an increase in the treadmill's speed? Bring it." The treadmill spun faster and faster. Iida whimpered as he was forced to speed up to keep with the demand, and soon, everyone's treadmills got a power surge. Zero flung tape at Bakugo, and Jiro tried stopping him with her jacks, but Bakugo powered on, touting each step as a victory against the machine beneath his boots. Sparks flew from the treadmill. Smoke curled around the belt, and the treadmill made straining noises. "My God, he's doing it." The treadmill gave a piteous groan. The belt snapped, and the entire machine flew apart. Bakugo stood victorious over its remains. His legs had swelled up with such enormous muscles that Arnold Schwarzenegger would weep to see them. "And that's why," Bakugo huffed, "I never beeping skip leg day." Kaminari watched the PS5 sitting on a pedestal, directly beneath the weights poised to crush it. As the pedestal rose, whirring like a pneumatic press and just as ready to pulverize, Kaminari pushed up on the barbell. His arms trembled, and he greedily beeped in air as his muscles screamed for more oxygen. Then the pedestal fell, and Kaminari let the weight drop. Up and down, constantly, until even his bones were growing biceps. Over on the next bench, Mineta grunted as he raised his own bar, without any weights attached. Iida lifted his barbell with his legs, Shoji lifted 4 barbells at once with a multitude of freshly grown limbs, and Ochako lifted 2 weightless anvils while holding back her nausea. Zero had his arms bound with tape. Even so, his arms felt as though they'd fly apart at any moment. Is this what dying feels like? Hiroshima hefted his own set of weights. "Bro, this is what living feels like. Hit me with that protein shake." A tube dropped from the ceiling. Chunky brown liquid oozed into Kirishima's mouth as he kept pumping. "No pain, no gain." "And what do we gain, exactly?" Zero asked. "More pain." "If we were to ascribe monetary value to pain," Momo said, creating and lifting her own barbells, "I'm pretty sure I'd be richer than my parents." "Only pretty sure. I stopped feeling my fingers 10 minutes ago. I've had worse." Todoroki had ice on his weights. "Endeavor usually sets my weights on fire." Sato had his own sealing tubes, pumping sugar directly into his nostrils. His bloodshot eyes stared blankly at the ceiling as he pumped 2 cars into the air. Aoyama used his naval laser to get an extra bit of lift, and Dark Shadow struggled with his own weights next to Tokiyami. Kota benched 2 lions while begging them not to eat him, and Tsuyu lifted both her siblings on a barbell. Bakugo slammed his barbell into the air, crushing 2 old computers with his weights. When he lowered his barbell, 2 more monitors took their place. Snorting like a bull, Bakugo smashed computer after computer until broken motherboards rained down around him. Attached to his weight was an electromagnet, generating current with every lift that powered Aizawa's desk fan, toaster oven, and recording camera. Aizawa snacked on pizza rolls while watching his students suffer. "Can I have some of those?" Kaminari begged. "Sure, I'll leave a plate for you right here." Kaminari looked at the plate, then at the PS5's in mortal peril, then at the weight sitting in both hands. "You're the worst, you know that." Aizawa grinned. "It never gets old hearing that. By the way, why isn't Izuku suffering with the rest of us?" "Oh, he is." Aizawa's hair floated as the floor dropped. "He's benching this entire room." Perceiving someone talking about him from afar, Izuku sneezed and bench-pressed the entire room into the stratosphere. "And now, we'll touch our toes. I can't feel my spine." The students of 1A sat on rows of yoga mats. Before them was their yoga instructor, a wrinkled, lanky old woman. When she bent forward, nimbly touching her toes, then reaching over and putting her palms on the soles of her feet, the rest of 1A mirrored her movements, regardless of their own body's opinions on the matter. A staccato of sharp cracks and pained groans filled the room. "Can't breathe. Dunno what you're talking about, Fumi-chan. This is easy." Tokiyami glared at Dark Shadow, bending bonelessly next to him. "And now, a knee to chest stretch." Everyone brought a knee to their chest. Mineta groaned as his hip cracked. "Is this what being old is like? I think I need a hip replacement." "Well, you already have the adult diaper thing going on," Jiro dryly pointed out. Mineta tried glaring at her, but he couldn't stretch his neck far enough for eye contact. "Just you wait, when I'm not a perfect sphere of agony I'll make you pay." "And now, a triceps stretch." The instructor contorted until she had both arms completely behind her back. All 8 of Shoji's arms bent back until he could grab his own feet. "Are we sure Aizawa isn't trying to kill us?" "What, this?" Ochako grinned as she patted her own back. "This is practically a vacation after 12-hour sprints." Shoji conceded that she might have a point, which was when the instructor called the next stretch. Now, the splits. Every masculine member of the class blanched. Even the girls had the courtesy to wince on their behalf. "No, please, I'm too young to die. I haven't even gotten to use mine yet." "You were never going to anyways," Jiro shot back. The instructor stretched. High-pitched whines came from every guy as their legs bent horizontally against the ground. Manly tears spilled forth, and their breaths came in ragged gasps. "Is this far enough?" Izuku asked. His own legs were not simply flat, but curving upward until they nearly touched his head. Narrowing her eyes at the challenge, the instructor bent her legs even further. Hoarse screams from every guy filled the room, while even the girls grit their teeth at the painful tension in their muscles. Todoroki had forsworn his oath against using fire to heat the area around his thighs, while Kaminari shocked himself into oblivion rather than endure the agony his legs put him through. Seeing the instructor stretch further than him, Izuku bent his legs behind his head. Iida begged him to stop, and Ojiro even tried smacking him with his tail, but to no avail. By the time their stretch competition had concluded, everyone was such a convoluted knot of human limbs that Alexander the Great would sooner cut them in half than attempt to untangle them. Izuku contorted his spine until he made 3 perfect loops and said, "I am a pretzel now." Pale faces stared out at the obstacle course laid out before them. A rickety wooden balancing beam overlooked an alligator and snake-infested pond, leading to a narrow path with boxing gloves on one side and crackling electric eels on the other. A series of narrow, slippery platforms, with crocodiles salivating open-mouthed beneath them, leading into a rock wall that bent back until it ran parallel to the hiding spot of a shoal of piranha. From there, a lone rope led up to salvation, in the form of a giant, fluffy mattress. Standing on an elevated platform on either side of the obstacle course were excited, giggling kindergartners, each armed with bows and blunt arrows. "Now remember, kids," Aizawa called up to the children. "Anyone who knocks one of my students into the water gets ice cream." "Ice cream!" the children roared, bloodthirst and savagery in their voices. Zero gulped. Kota, my dearest friend, could you maybe convince the gators to leave us alone?" Kota frantically shook his head. In a trembling voice, he whispered, "They're from Florida." One gator heard him, smirked, and clamped its mouth shut with a startling snap. Its deep-bellied hiss sent shivers down every student's spine and made the kindergartners point and whoop with delight. "We're so dead." And, begin. The starting area sank rapidly. With piranhas nipping at their heels, everyone sprinted out. Arrows flew, pelting the students as they raced through the first obstacle. Boxing gloves popped in and out at random intervals, bludgeoning the students towards a watery grave. Sato and Kirishima charged through, withstanding the blows, while Suyu and Hagakure nimbly dodged around them. "How?" Hagakure ducked and asked, "Do they know where I am?" "I gave them infrared cameras," Aizawa called out. Once they reached the floating platforms, Ochako tapped herself and floated over, while Mineta made himself a springboard of spheres. As they flew through the air, the children concentrated a volley of arrows at them. Mineta escaped unscathed through sheer smallness, but Ochako got pelted with enough arrows to knock her off course. Crocodiles circled like vultures as she drifted lower and lower. At the rock wall, Zero ignored the handholds entirely and looped tape around his hands. Shoji skittered up like a spider, Iida used his engines in spurts to spring upwards, and Kirishima taunted the kids, drawing all the arrows to him. "Go on bros, I got this," Kirishima shouted as arrows fell like rain. One of the kids wheeled over a cannon. As he flew into the water, Kirishima shouted, "I don't got this." As Bakugo and Sato brawled over the rope, Yaoyorozu fired a grappling hook and climbed her own way up. Arrows pummeled her as the children fired everything at her in a desperate bid to stop her. One hand on the final platform, Momo shouted, "Never give up, never surrender." She raised her head above the platform. A grinning child pointed an arrow at her. Momo gulped and said, "I surrender." Gran Torino waddled around the sidewalk, blindly peering around him and asking in a feeble voice, "Where was that taiyaki store again?" 1A looked at Torino, then back at Aizawa. Aizawa gave them a predatory grin and said, "For today's challenge, we're going to take a break and focus on the humbler aspects of heroism." Oh thank God. Kaminari fell to his knees and sent thanks skywards. The students on the lower end of the grading scale celebrated similarly, but those with more acute minds remained wary of a trap. "And what, exactly, is the challenge?" Momo asked. "To help this elderly man cross the street." "Really? At this time of day? In this part of the city, localized entirely within this section cordoned off for demolition?" "Yes." "Iida, make it quick." "Yes, President." Iida fired up a recipro burst. He blurred towards Gran Torino, who fell face first onto the pavement. Iida's fingers missed him by an inch, his toe caught on the old man's cape, and Iida careened into a load-bearing wall of an apartment complex. The entire building tipped over and crushed Gran Torino flat. Everyone rushed inside the toppled building. They found Gran Torino lying next to a cracked window, with red splattered all over and wrinkly pink tubes spilling out of his costume. Ochako raced over and started scooping up the mess. "Call an ambulance, call an ambulance." "But not for me." Gran Torino landed an uppercut on Ochako's jaw and launched her through the wall roof. 1A gawked as Gran Torino wiped ketchup and sausages off his costume. "That was sloppy. What are they teaching you kids these days?" Ice raced across the floor and covered his feet. Tape lashed out towards him, and a volley of sticky spheres followed them. Momo made a net launcher and took aim. Gran Torino grinned. "Now that's more like it." With a burst of air, he popped out of the ice, leapt across the hallway, and wove through the barrage of sticky projectiles. He grabbed Zero by his tape, wound it around until Zero was mummified, and hurled him into his classmates. Ochako lifted the whole building with her quirk, and Gran Torino stumbled under the sudden shift of gravity. Iida ran like a hamster on a wheel, spinning the entire building, while Momo made gravity boots for everyone. In the spinning building, Gran Torino leapt from floor to ceiling to wall, weaving around the infrastructure to land devastating kicks on anyone that charged him. By the time 1A gave up, they had foot-shaped bruises all over, rainbow-colored vomit coated every surface, and the entire town had fallen to rubble. Gran Torino stood atop a pile of students and said feebly, "Wish I had some young man to help me across the street." Bakugo, with Torino's foot squishing his face, said, "Beep you geezer." Izuku walked up with a plate of steaming taiyaki. "Here you go." Gran Torino took a taiyaki and walked with him. The whole class groaned. Shoji woke with a startled gasp and bolted upright. Stone walls surrounded him, branching off into different paths. He cupped an ear to the wall and heard Jiro using her own quirk on the stone. He could sense the walls stretching around him in a labyrinthine maze, broken up with sealed rooms, pitfalls, and pools of water. Shoji groaned and rubbed the stiffness out of his shoulders. Playing hot and cold with the ringing in the walls, Shoji followed the sound until he stumbled upon Jiro. "Oh, thank God," Jiro said. "I was hoping you'd track me down. Any idea where the others are, or why we're down here?" "We're down here because Aizawa's a sadist. As to where everyone else is, I caught a few sets of feet." Shoji and Jiro walked together, until they both heard ponderous footsteps. "Sato, that you, buddy?" The stomping came closer. A hulking, furred figure with bull horns, a bovine face, and cloven hooves rounded the corner. It stared them down with glowing red eyes, snorted, and charged. Shoji grew 6 sets of arms. As the minotaur rammed towards his gut, Shoji twisted aside, flung the minotaur off its feet, and pinned it underneath his knee. "That's not Sato," Jiro said nervously. "No kidding. Any idea what we should do with this thing?" "We don't have any capture tape. Maybe try knocking it out." Shoji rammed its face into the ground. Its forehead made a metallic clang and had a dent in it. No longer burdened with the guilt of killing a living creature, Shoji twisted its neck until it snapped. "Or we could do that." "Jesus. What? It's just a robot." The minotaur stood up. It turned around, so its face and its back aimed towards Sato. "Oh shit, it's a robot. Run." The minotaur clumsily followed them, and they quickly lost it. Faced with a stone door, or the stumbling machine behind them, Shoji wrenched the door open and ran inside. The dark room lit up with torches, and a pit of snakes all turned to stare at them. Shoji sighed. Why did it have to be snakes? Mineta ran for dear life as a boulder rolled towards him. "Not fair. How come I'm heavy enough to trigger the pressure plate, but you weren't?" Suyu ribbited. Less shouting, more running. Mineta risked a glance back behind him. "Or we could do the thing from FMA. Fifth Laboratory." Suyu nodded. They each dove into a corner and curled up. Suyu easily fit around the boulder, but one of Mineta's spheres stuck to the boulder. As it kept rolling, it scooped up Mineta with it. "Why can't I catch a break just once?" Mineta screamed as the boulder rolled towards a pool of electric eels. Izuku stepped out and punched the boulder. He caught Mineta inches from the pond. "I caught the break," Izuku said. He gave Mineta a chunk of rock and said, "You can have it." Thanks." Momo grimaced as she donned her black costume. "And I thought mine was revealing. Are they all like this?" Sato squeezed into his green tights. "I'll trade you," he wheezed. Momo took one look at the red and green monstrosity he wore and said, "This is fine. Great. Even. Just perfect." "Good. You're ready," rasped a voice from the ceiling. "Robins, Batgirls, roll out." "Roll out in what? The Batmobile won't even fit 5 of us." The Batmobile unfolded, stood up on 2 legs and winked at the 1A students, then folded itself into a bat-themed coach bus. Batman dropped from the ceiling and took the driver's seat. Arkham Asylum just had a mass breakout. The city will burn if we don't do something about it. Finally, Mina cried out. "Now we get to do the fun stuff." "Fun?" Batman asked. "Oh, I'll show you fun." As the Bat Coach blazed out of the Bat Cave, Kaminari wailed, "Why did you have to say it? Did you not learn? How was I supposed to know Batman was just Aizawa in a fursuit?" The Bat Coach sped up and swerved around a curve, slamming Mina into the glass. "I think he heard you," Kaminari's stage whispered. A vine sprouted out of the road and flipped the Bat Coach. Batman leapt out a window and threw his batarangs, while the students rattled around the rolling bus like a carton of strawberries. Thoroughly bruised, the students stumbled out and witnessed a vista of carnage and mayhem the likes of which would make Dante's Inferno seem a pleasant spring day. Vines crushed buildings in their grasp, glaciers ground city streets into gravel, and puzzle boxes clamped around fleeing civilians, forcing them to solve horrific feats of physical and mental acuity as giggling serial killers ran towards them. A bipedal alligator stomped towards them. Killer Croc licked his chops and said, bats and robins, my favorite treats. He snatched up Kirishima and bit down. With a wince-inducing crunch, all of Killer Croc's teeth broke. Ooh, that looks painful, man. You should see a dentist. Once the villains were cleaned up and shipped back to Arkham, the students sat around in tattered costumes, gasping for breath and patching themselves up with Cero's tape. Batman came up to them and said, "Good work. You kept the city alive for another day." Mineta screamed, "Good work. We almost died." "Ah, you were fine. Joker's the only one that ever killed a Robin, and I sent someone special to take care of him." "You sent Izuku?" Yes." Mineta shook his head. "Poor bastard." As the Joker dragged canisters of toxic gas across the street, a robin perched on a nearby pole. The Joker walked up to it and laughed hysterically. An actual robin wearing green tights. I didn't know the Batman could tell a joke. The robin darted forward and pecked Joker unconscious. Then it morphed into Izuku wearing green tights. "I am a robin. Tweet tweet." Kaminari blearily opened his eyes as his head rattled against a stiff wooden board. "Hey you, you're finally awake." Kaminari leapt up. "Yes, finally. Skyrim, baby, here we come." The people aboard the wagon laughed at him. "Skyrim, boy, this here is the Australian outback." Kaminari gulped. "Is there at least a dragon? Do alligators count? I saw one breathing fire, but I think it got into the kerosene." The men tossed Kaminari onto the ground. Kaminari looked around, and said, "Fus ro da." A rock tumbled over. Kaminari leapt for joy, until he saw the cassowary that had knocked it over. It screeched and ran straight for him. Sato woke with a sloth on his chest, its claw digging into his neck. "Hi little buddy, don't you belong in a tree?" When he moved, he heard a loud twang. A crossbow bolt buried itself in the ground where he had laid moments before. In a tree branch, a sloth had a crossbow pointed at him. "Is Kota playing a prank on me?" A tree groaned and tipped sideways. Sato sprinted out of its path. A sloth with wood chips piled around it leaned against the splintered stump. "What's the big idea? That almost hit me." A strong wind blew the leaves aside, revealing an army of sloths, all armed to the teeth. They slowly pulled triggers, pulled pins on grenades, and called in orbital strikes. Sato ran for his life. Ojiro woke slumped against the side of a boxing ring, with padded gloves on his hands. A kangaroo shadow boxed at him from the other corner. He rolled his neck and stretched his tail until it popped. "Kangaroo Fight Club, I'm down." Suyu's stomach rumbled. A spider crawled along a fence post, and she snapped it up with her tongue. More spiders dropped from trees and darted out from rocks. "It's a good thing there's so many. I don't know what else I'd eat out here." A shadow fell over her. She looked up and saw a towering mass of spiders crashing down at her. "Hero, on second thought, I'm not hungry." Kota huddled on the ground, rocking back and forth as the wildlife whispered and snickered around him. "What a tasty morsel. I call dibs on his eyeballs. How long will we wait?" Only one person could save him now. Kota shouted, "Crikey, look at the size of that one." "Oh no, not him. Didn't the stingrays get him?" "Isn't she gorgeous?" Kota put on a khaki polo shirt. "Why don't we get a closer look?" "Run, flee. The hunter is back." Kota snatched a snake out of the bushes. It hung limply in his hands. "What a beauty. Do you see the pattern on these scales?" "It's too late for me," the snake mourned. "Save yourselves." Back at UA, Nezu watched the newest episode of Heroic and Afraid on live television. Training, publicity, and extra income all in one. You really outdid yourself this year, Aizawa. Hiroshima worriedly backed away from the crocodile swimming towards him. "You really don't want to eat me. I'm super tough, you'll just break your teeth." The crocodile, mistaking Kirishima's warning for the spurious claims of frightened prey, lunged. It hissed and roared as half its teeth cracked. "I tried to warn you, my dude. Here, let me see, I'll try to help." As Kirishima waded towards the crocodile, a python slithered through the water and bit his heel. It thrashed in agony in the water, its fangs snapped in two. "Oh, crud, did I step on you? That was totally not cool of me." A spider leapt down and bit his neck. The arachnid hissed swears at him and plopped into the water. Hiroshima snapped it up. I hope you're still breathing. Does anyone know how to do CPR on a tarantula? Mineta woke to a suffocating pressure surrounding him. Worming his way towards the light, he poked his head out and took a deep breath. He looked around. The Australian outback zipped by as two enormous legs bounded underneath him. Oh cool, is this what it's like to be tall? Then he looked closer at the pouch he sat in. It was furry, and connected to those two giant legs. Mineta froze, suddenly terrified to turn around. Instead, he huddled back into the pouch and hoped baby kangaroos got Snickers bars to eat. Tokiyami knew that throwing himself between a little girl and four giant angry birds wasn't a smart idea, but he didn't sign up for hero school to do the smart thing. He held out his hands, stopping the charge in his tracks. The cassowary hissed and pecked at him, but Tokiyami held his ground. Whoa, easy, I'm a bird, just like you guys. We're cool, right? The cassowary jumped and clawed at him. Tokiyami's cloak tore, and dark shadow billowed out of the tear. Who dares disturb my slumber? Dark shadow boomed. The cassowary squawked in panic. Then, seeing the giant, nebulous bird shadow looming before them, the cassowary prostrated themselves. Their chirps and warbles sounded ominously like prayer. More cassowary filed in, dragging sheep and goats, shaking incense censers, and donning black robes. When one cassowary offered Tokiyami a bowl of fruit, he decided that being a god of scary Australian birds might make a nice career change. Aoyama huddled before a pile of dried branches, shivering in the cold Australian night. Say FF freezing, but for a dazzling individual such as myself, 'tis a splendid opportunity to demonstrate both my brilliant quirk and my brilliant mind. Behold, my naval laser. A thin trickle of light hit the twigs, starting a tiny fire. Aoyama's eyes lit up, and let there be light. Magnifique. A spark leapt from the fire to the tall, dry grass. The entire horizon went up like an ocean of gasoline. As animals stampeded and firefighting helicopters swooped in like hawks, Aoyama curled up and hoped no one would notice him. Izuku sat at a table that remained inexplicably unburnt as the Australian wildfire raged around him. Izuku took a sip of burning motor oil from a teacup and said, "This is satisfactory." Todoroki watched the Australian landscape burn from atop a stony ridge. He reached out with his left hand. Ice raced across the ground, smothering the flames where they sprouted. Looking out over the frozen rivers, frost-covered plants, and animals encased in ice, Todoroki said, "There. Everything's safe." As he turned away, Todoroki heard a deafening explosion. When he turned back, the wildfire raged harder than ever, and burning chunks of ice fell like meteors from the sky. Todoroki distastefully eyed his left arm. He looked back at the wildfire. If ice made everything worse, will fire make it better? He set the fire on fire. For a second, Australia glowed like a dying sun, before the fires extinguished. Todoroki looked down at his left hand. "I'm still not using you." Iida ran for his life, but the cassowaries ran faster. Seeing the ocean waves just ahead, Iida sprinted for the safety of the water. He looked back and said, "And this is checkmate. Because cassowaries cannot swim, which means you will be unable to reach me once I am inside the ocean." Iida turned back around and wondered where the shoreline had gone. Miles of ocean stretched out in front of him. He looked down and saw his feet skimming across the ocean's surface. "Ha, I have triumphed against the hostile Australian fauna. Surely there's nothing that can reach me from the ocean." A great white lunged out of the water. Iida veered aside, only to see a Portuguese man-of-war bobbing in the waves, flying a flag from Portugal and aiming jellyfish stinger ballistae at him. Iida immediately turned back around and shouted, "I take it all back. The cassowaries are fine." Clad in camouflage paint, Bakugo darted across the brush. Birds took flight, but Bakugo lunged and grabbed one. And that's another government drone taken out. Victory for humanity. A cassowary stalked out of the underbrush. Bakugo let his hands fall, and the tiny bird flew away, screaming in panic. Grinning maniacally, Bakugo let his hands crackle and said, "Looks like you're the combat models. Bring it on." The cassowary, sensing danger, backed away slowly and muttered to itself in bird speak, human eyes track movement. If I'm very slow. Bakugo lunged. The cassowary bolted and never looked back as Bakugo left craters in the Australian landscape. Ochako floated into the air and opened a shirt, letting it catch the wind. As she floated along, a spider landed on her hand. Ochako screamed and plummeted from the sky. She landed next to Todoroki. Left hand. Now. Todoroki tried to run, but Ochako tackled him. Using him like a flamethrower, Ochako torched the ground until it all burned again. Aizawa landed in Melbourne and saw the burning landscape. I knew bringing them here was a good idea. Shigaraki decayed the bank doors and held out an open sack. Put the money in the bag. Dabi disgustedly tugged at the ski mask covering his face. If you're just going to use your quirk right away, why did we even bother with these? I quite like them. They're itchy and hideous. Not to mention, Compress added, who wore his own mask under the ski mask, banks don't carry cash on hand these days. Can I please stab someone already? Shigaraki shouted. All of you, shut up. He scratched at his neck, inadvertently decaying his ski mask in the process. Shigaraki, not noticing this, asked the bank teller, do you have my money or not? Toga hummed merrily and skipped, swinging her bag of cash over her shoulder while she licked her blood-soaked knife like a popsicle. Compress, carrying his own bags in his marbles, said, I can't believe that worked. Of course it did, Shigaraki snapped. I came up with the plan. And your plan has our getaway route take us next to UA because how else will the heroes find out? Wait, what? We haven't been in the spotlight for far too long. Beating up their precious baby heroes will be exactly what we need to strike fear into the hearts of the people. Spinner cheered and said, exactly as Master Stain would. The moment the vigilante's name left his lips, Spinner vanished with a cut-off yelp. The villains formed up, covering their backs and scouring the streets for their assailants. Are you heroes, or cowards? Shigaraki asked. Show yourselves. Stamp, stamp. The ground shook. Shigaraki wondered if Gigantomachia had entered the city for some reason, but the footsteps belonged to someone smaller. Smaller, relatively, as the bulky, muscled figure towered over them all. This one must be Sato. Get him before he can eat more sugar. Himiko charged. The hulking figure plucked a sphere off its head and hurled it like a shot put. Himiko slammed into a building, and the sphere stuck her in the impact crater. Boss. Dabi said quietly. I think that one's the Great Midget. Mineta. Impossible. He's huge. Twice shouted. Dabi readied his own fire, only for a bigger fire to sweep in and snuff it out. Dabi whirled, Endeavor's name on his lips, when a flick of ice froze him solid. Gorilla Tape bound Compress in a pretzel, and when Magna used her quirk, she reeled in a hissing cassowary. Shigaraki found himself alone, surrounded by towering, muscled 1A students. Shigaraki cringed as an even louder set of footsteps rattled the nearby buildings. Ducking under power cables, Sato cast a dark shadow over Shigaraki, which dark shadow used to get even bigger than Sato. You'll never. Sato's fist hit Shigaraki like a hammer, driving him deep into the concrete like a nail. Kurogiri took one look from his warp gate and ran. A sack opened, and a green bill slipped out. It said, I am money now. Now that you have completed your advanced physical training, Nezu told the assembled 1A students, it's time for the next phase. Momo made and handed out assault rifles, Izuku turned into a Metal Gear, and Mineta leapt towards an open window. Making your very own hero moves. The guns trained on Nezu froze. Mineta hovered midair before the window frame. Yes, your first hero move is a critical part of your growth as prospective heroes, and definitely not something we're shelling out because the author needs a quick cop-out for a 20-drabble series. Nezu paused. No noises were forthcoming. Smentos. Did you forget to fix the fourth wall again? A letter appeared in Nezu's hands. Right. Vacation exists. Anyways, we'll have one of the teachers demonstrate to show you how to proceed. Aizawa. Aizawa hung from the ceiling in his sleeping bag. No. You know you're overdue for a new pair. Then get the new pair. Would you rather I have Present Mike demonstrate his? Aizawa sighed and opened his eyes. Everyone felt a tingle as their quirks turned off. Aizawa's eyes opened wider, stretching impossibly across his face. Pink butterfly wings unfurled behind him, first a single pair, then another, more and more unfurling like peeled skin. Aizawa's body shrank into his head, and more eyelids opened, parting ears and nostrils and mouth and hair to reveal more staring eyes. "Be not afraid, my children," Aizawa said in an echoing voice. "As with all things, this is only temporary." Ojiro fell backwards. He felt behind himself and screamed, "My tail. It's gone." Shoji pulled the cover off his face and felt his smooth, human chin. "I'm a real boy." Sato blinked blearily in front of him. "Where did the room go? And does anyone know where the bathroom is?" His eyes rolled back, and he hit the floor like a sack of sugar. Ochako vomited. To her horror, it was chunky brown instead of the usual rainbow appearance and flavor. Momo's bra shrank 3 sizes. Tsuyu finished a complete sentence without riveting. Tokiyami did chest compressions on his shadow. Ashido frantically covered herself in pink dye, and Hagakure was still invisible because she figured no one would notice if she skipped class. Aizawa's voice boomed, "Let the world be cleansed of this impurity, and your souls shepherded beyond the veil." His eyes glowed incandescent, and the world faded into motes of light. Then Aizawa's eyeballs exploded. He hit the ground, swearing and covering his empty eye sockets. "Eyeballs, please," he hissed. Nezu pressed a button. Another Aizawa walked in, yawning, saying, "Sorry I'm late, Nezu plucked out his eyeballs and slit his throat. As the second Aizawa bled out, Aizawa 1 blinked with their new eyes. "Make me do this again and I'm quitting. You really think I wouldn't replace you with a clone? You'd have done it already if you were going to." After Aizawa left, Nezu whispered to the traumatized students, "He's clone 43. Are you sure about this?" Aizawa asked. It shall be a most magnifique demonstration." "All right, your funeral." Aoyama stepped into the ring across from Izuku, wearing a giant white helmet and glittering body armor. "So, at last, we fight for the first time, for the last time. I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's roommate." "Wait, Todoroki is my father's brother's nephew. What does that make us?" "Classmates." Izuku ignited his lightsaber and held it at the ready. "Shall we begin?" Aoyama did a twirl and shouted, glittering naval sword of ultimate dazzling sparkles. A thick, long beam crept out of Aoyama's navel. When it reached its full length, the beam went limp, flopping between Aoyama's legs. "Mon Dieu, this never happens, I swear." He jostled it around, murmuring under his breath, until the beam straightened back up. "There we go, ready for a most sparkling duel. I have been ready for the past 12 minutes and 32 seconds. Good, I see your sparkles are as big as mine. Let's see how magnifique you can handle it." Aoyama waddled forward, swinging his laser out like a pool noodle. Izuku batted it aside and darted forward, but Aoyama flailed wildly and parried his thrust. His beam twisted around Izuku's lightsaber, leaving the two hopelessly tangled. "Merde, I have it when it gets all twisted. Hang on, if I get my leg up on yours, I think I can get it untangled." Aoyama awkwardly clambered over Izuku while he remained still as a statue. After some wriggling, Aoyama's naval lightsaber pulled free. "There we go, on guard." Izuku backed away while Aoyama whipped his beam around. Izuku's lightsaber stood stock still, until he darted forward and slashed through Aoyama's belt. The naval laser petered out, and Aoyama scrambled to keep his pants up. "Could you hand that back to me, please?" Izuku handed him the severed belt. Aoyama tied it around his waist, tapped the focusing lens in the center, and said, "I'm surprised that you handed it back to me. I like to fight fair. I do not fight fair only when I must. Most honorable. Prepare yourself, I shall not be beaten again." Aoyama focused, but nothing happened. Aizawa stepped into the ring. "I've seen enough. Aoyama, a hero move needs to be bigger. Flashier. I thought you of all students would have no trouble with this one." "Well, I had another idea, but I thought it might be a tiny bit too dangerous. Endeavor's hero moves burn down city blocks. Yours will be fine." "If you say so." Aoyama dug an eye patch out of his pocket. "This is to keep the power trapped within me from destroying the entire known universe." "Sure it does," Aizawa said dryly. Demonstration, please. Yes, sensei. Explosion. The world disappeared in a glittering flash. When the sparkles settled, Aoyama stood amidst a flat plain dusted with sparkles like a snow globe. Izuku dusted himself off and ate some of the glitter. Tastes sparkly. Aizawa waddled into the testing room in full PPE, with oxygen tanks strapped to his back, plastic guards hovering around him, and a finger on a button to flood the entire room. Izuku had fled the country, and everyone else gathered in a floating bunker. All right, Mina, you may begin, Aizawa said. Make sure the planet still exists when you're done. Oh, the planet will be just fine, Mina assured. I sadly cannot say the same for your pitiful species. Behold, the hour of your conquest has come. Mina pressed a button. The space above Japan and New York City warped, revealing 2 fleets of sleek alien ships. Your greatest defender had cowardly fled the moment they heard I was to unleash the full might of the Urkin Empire, and now there is no one left to save you. Aizawa looked up at the alien fleet. Then back down at Mina. Points for creativity and thinking outside of your quirk, but the logistics of calling in an extraterrestrial fleet every time you want to make a minor arrest makes this hero move highly impractical. Might make a good ace in your back pocket, but something for general use. I encourage you to think a little smaller. Mina's smile faltered. No, you don't get it. Your pathetic civilization is over. Done. Finished. You all serve the tallest, may the reign forever over all the known universe. I suppose this is why you wanted to be known as Alien Queen. I thought it was a bit of a deep cut with the acid thing in that super old classic horror movie. Being an actual alien ruler certainly justifies the whole alien fleet thing, though you might run into issues with the nation's air sovereignty. I'll run it by Nezu. You no longer have any sovereignty. Submit now, or we will put the entire planet to the torch. Aizawa winced. Ooh, you really shouldn't have said that. The Americans are really twitchy about stuff like that. Dib stared at the alien ships through his telescope. Yes, he shouted. I knew it. They're finally here. Time to rally our defenders, drive back the alien menace, and claim my rightful spot as the savior of mankind. He dashed downstairs and shouted, Dad, Dad. Come here. I found them. Now hold on, son, I just need to pour this test tube into this flask, and I'll cure world hunger. No time. Dib yanked on his dad's arm, and the test tube clattered down a drain. Here, you see it. By the scientific method, I do. Those are trace quantities of a hitherto unknown element. Wah. Dib looked through the telescope. Where there was once an alien fleet, only dust remained. His dad patted him on the back. You might have made a life-changing discovery. I'm proud of you, son. A wind blew, and the dust scattered. And, it's gone. I am no longer proud of you. Left alone in his room, Dib shrieked in rage. Tsuyu was bright orange. Aizawa immediately scowled. No. It's not what you think, hero. You're mimicking a poison dart frog. Tsuyu blinked. Well, you're not wrong. Still, I would not choose a hero power that indiscriminately kills. I do wish to be a rescue hero, after all. Aizawa sighed. All right, explain to me how poison can save people. Aside from the medical applications of slowing down someone's heart rate and stabilizing them for further medical attention. I can do this. Tsuyu touched a steel beam. Within seconds, it rusted away. How does that even work? Aizawa asked. What is rust but poisoned metal? And that's not all I can do. She touched the ground. It fizzled and ate away at itself, leaving a puddle of salt at the bottom of a spherical hole. I can poison the ground too. By salting it, I see. Aizawa rubbed his chin. Can you poison anything you touch? Tsuyu tapped the designer t-shirt she wore, and it turned into a faded, store-brand copy. Then she tapped Aizawa's clothes, and the black rags turned into garbage bags. Touch my sleeping bag and you are expelled. Hero. Duly noted. Tsuyu's phone went off. When she took it out of her pocket, the smartphone shriveled in on itself, turning into a flip phone. Oh no. The text from her dad asking how school was going morphed into a drunken request for her to get more beer. Tsuyu, you need to stop. I'm trying. She dunked her hands into a pond. The water bubbled and turned into Mountain Dew. Shiozaki shrieked and shouted, the Antichrist is upon us. Repent ye sinners. I'm sure if I kept going, I'd get wine eventually, Tsuyu grumbled. Here, try these. Aizawa tossed her a bundle of newspapers. The news can't get any more toxic than it already is. Tsuyu strapped the newspaper to herself like armor. The text wobbled, but word of Canadian wildfires, Russia invading Ukraine, and another Trump scandal simply changed fonts from Times New Roman to Comic Sans. Tsuyu, you're poisoning the story itself. I have to shut off your quirk. Aizawa stared directly at her. The moment he used his quirk, Tsuyu's skin turned into a rainbow of colors, and Aizawa's eyeballs bled. You poisoned my quirk. It's making you stronger. I'm trying, but I think I poisoned my own self-control. Tsuyu felt her head growing fuzzy. The whole world suffocated from lack of oxygen, except for Izuku, who decided it was nap time. With the last of her fading strength, Tsuyu grabbed her own forearm. The color faded from her skin and she took a deep breath. Aizawa grumbled and dug his melting eyes out of their sockets. Great, I just got these. Sorry, hero, but on the bright side, I think I poisoned causality and brought everything back to normal. She opened the door. A white void stretched endlessly beyond the bounds of the training room. Oops, guessed I poisoned reality too. Hero. Behold, the Iida secret technique, passed down the Iida family for generations. Transform. The machinery on Iida's legs crept up his body. Metal plates clanked together, forming mechanized limbs that towered over everyone. A metal mask slammed over Iida's face, with glowing red eyes, and giant robot arms drew a two-handed longsword. Then the giant mech shrunk down and turned into a plain white truck. Aizawa blandly asked, "You went through all of that just to turn into a truck?" The truck beeped twice. "You can't talk like that, can you?" Another two honks. "Did you try the radio?" Kaminari asked. "I saw that in a movie once." Iida's radio turned on. "Hello darkness, my love of my life, hit me baby one more time." Tokiyami bristled. "Absolutely not. Oh come on," Dark Shadow said. "You never let me have any fun. Can you at least do anything as a truck?" Aizawa asked. "Fire rockets, or at least use that sword again." One honk. "Well, I'm going to have to dock points since I can't see any possible use for this hero move." Bakugo stormed in. "Hey, I'd say sorry I'm late, but I spent the morning destroying the robot army's drones around the school, so you're welcome." His eyes fell on the truck. "I knew Iida was a robot. Die." Iida drove into Bakugo. Bakugo disappeared in a burnt sugar-scented pop. Aizawa froze, midway through grading Iida, and said, "That was by far the best hero move I've ever seen." Full marks. Bakugo woke up on the back of a wagon. The man sitting next to him said, "Hey you're finally awake." Bakugo slowly sat up and blasted the man's face off. The driver looked back and said, "What the?" He screamed as Bakugo leapt on his face like a headcrab and blasted him apart. Panting hard and waving smoke off his fingers, Bakugo grinned up at the sky and said, "You can't fool me, bastards. I know this is a simulation. And when I get out of here, I'm going to blast each and every one of you stupid robots to bits." The dragon, heading towards the castle for a snack, took one look at the ranting, raving human blasting craters into the ground and disintegrating trees with his hands, and wisely flew in the opposite direction. At a computer terminal, a pale-skinned, lanky alien said, "The simulation can't handle all these particle effects. It's going to crash. We can't risk a breakout. Initiate protocol truck Kun." A truck slammed into the container holding Bakugo, and he disappeared. Bakugo threw another explosion as the world shifted. He blinked, and suddenly, he had a hand through a giant, tentacled robot. The subterranean city below him cheered. "Our hero, you broke us free from our robot oppressors." Bakugo snarled and laid waste to their city. "You can't fool me, robot bastards. Don't think I didn't notice you changing the simulation. Now come out here and fight me like a man." "So," Ochako said, "I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom. And suddenly I am filled with dread," Aizawa deadpanned. "Proceed." Ochako touched the floor. Gravity disappeared. People screamed as they drifted away from the ground, and cars spun their wheels uselessly as their drivers honked the horn. Boats sailed sideways on vertical seas, planes dodged cows and pigs as they drifted past, and trains chugged along entirely oblivious to the disappearance of one of the universe's fundamental forces. Aizawa stood rooted to the floor. An effective way to throw off your opponent, I'll grant you that, but I'm not done yet. Just give me a second. Ochako took a stick out of her pocket. Then she took a length of glowing green tape and stuck it at the end of the stick. It made a sound effect as it stuck in place against the floor. Ochako tugged. The entire planet moved out from under Aizawa as Ochako hefted a piece of the cosmos like a carnival balloon. Tsuyu did the breaststroke through a floating sphere of water. Bakugo rocketed through like a jet plane and smashed a real jet plane with his hands, and Izuku called his mom, asking her to make another planet. Ochako raised the planet high, then struck. The test dummy in front of her disintegrated, and the planet slid neatly back in place under Aizawa's feet. Ochako pressed her hands together, and gravity, along with the planet, was back to business as usual. A bit convoluted, but I have to admit, hero moves don't get much flashier than that, Aizawa said. And you even got your nausea under. Aizawa handed her a bucket. Ochako opened her mouth, and a solid rainbow gushed inside. The vomiting continued for long enough that Aizawa wondered how the bucket held it all before deciding not to question it. The bucket floated off into space once Ochako was done. She wiped her mouth and said, "Never doing that again." "Good. I like having gravity." A high-pitched shriek interrupted them. In the courtyard, Mineta was strapped to a wooden cross, with flamethrowers roasting him from all sides while the cross spun like a vertical rotisserie. "That looks like the same green tape you used," Aizawa said accusingly. "I think the tape just did that on its own." Rockets lit up under Mineta. His screams Dopplered away as he was shot into space. As they watched the cross vanish into the sky, a floating green leaf appeared, handed them two weirdly shaped nuggets of gold, and disappeared. "Quick question," Aizawa said. "Did you try strapping two fans to a Segway and flying around?" "Yeah, but then I got air sick, and, well, let's just say I had to play it off as a Pride Month gimmick." "Ooh, what if I strapped a cannon to it? Would that be a good hero move?" "Wait, don't." The moment Ochako unrolled some green tape, Mineta fell directly in front of a row of cannons. "Oh come on. Ultimate martial arts technique," Ojiro shouted at the top of his lungs, debilitating tail slam of ultimate villain smiting justice. Ojiro slammed his tail into the test dummy. It flopped over and lay on the ground. Ojiro stared at Aizawa, and Aizawa stared back at Ojiro. "No." Ojiro threw his hands up. "You can't be serious. Your hero move requires a bit more creativity and effort than hitting an opponent with your tail." "What about the name?" "The name had plenty of creativity and effort in it." Aizawa snorted. "I thought Bakugo took the cake for his hero name, but you might have outdone him." "Well, what the heck am I supposed to do?" "Figure it out. I'm not paid to hold your hand." "Fine, I will." Ojiro came back half an hour later with a pistol duct taped to his tail. "Your hero move can't be a gun." Snipe awkwardly coughed in the background. "Yes I can. I can even fire it, watch." Ojiro cracked his tail like a whip. The pistol went off. Izuku idly plucked the bullet out of the dent in his forehead and ate it. "Okay, I'm still working on the aim, but you gotta admit that was impressive." Snipe held up a board with 10 written on it. Aizawa glared at him, and Snipe dejectedly left the room. "Try again," Aizawa said. Another hour later, Ojiro's tail opened the door. It wore a brown trench coat, a fedora, and Groucho Marx glasses. "Good afternoon, sir," Ojiro's tail said. "My name is Terry Tailington V, at your service." "Ojiro, I can see you standing behind your tail." "Why, whoever is this Ojiro person you speak of?" Terry asked. "Ventriloquism isn't a hero move either." Manga, waiting with a sock puppet by Vlad King's office, grumbled hiragana under his breath and threw the puppet away. "Fine," Ojiro said. "If you don't like my tail so much, I'll have someone improve it." Aizawa felt vaguely uneasy about that, but dismissed it. After all, what was the worst that could happen? The next day, Aizawa burned a pair of eyeballs trying to stop a giant, skin-colored and blonde-haired Leviathan from destroying the school. It ignored his quirk entirely. "I am Terry Tailington V. The Leviathan boomed. And you shall all pay for mocking me. Dangling at the end of Terry, Ojiro wailed, I tried to stop him, but he won't listen. Nezu called the first number on his speed dial list. Seconds later, Izuku ate a few buses, grew to the size of a skyscraper, and wrestled Terry to the ground. He jabbed a syringe into its neck, and the tail writhed as it shrank. You can't stop me, Terry groaned. I will destroy you all. Ojiro experimentally flicked his tail and watched it like it might bite him. Aizawa handed him a pistol and said, your hero move is a gun. Thanks, though I don't think I'll be taping it to my tail anytime soon. While I appreciate your ingenuity, Aizawa began. You bet. Kaminari scooted his feet along a massive woolen rug, rubbing his fuzzy slippers deep into the fabric. This is the most ingenuate useless thing I have ever done. Aizawa rolled his eyes. While I appreciate you have enough of a grasp on physics to replicate an experiment meant for toddlers. Hey, where are you going to get a giant rug every time you need to perform your hero move? Details. There's rug stores always going out of business everywhere you look. Kaminari's hair stood on end as he chugged along the carpet. His legs shuffled faster. You could tap into power lines, or drain a car battery. Yeah, but all that electricity tastes icky. It's processed, man. I only want that all-natural zap juice. Ignoring that nonsensical detail, you hardly need more power, Kaminari. What you need is a way to target your power, or to at least keep yourself from zapping your own brain. Fuzzy slippers won't help with either. But a hero move is all about going plus ultra. Kaminari shuffled as fast as he could. Sparks danced up his hair as it stood like porcupine quills. His feet were pink blurs zipping across the carpet. Plus, ultra, Kaminari shouted as wisps of current bled from his eyes. Aizawa's scarf drifted towards Kaminari, and he firmly wrapped it around himself. Other odds and ends not nailed to the floor crept across the floor and stuck themselves to Kaminari. Within seconds, he had a collection of paperclips, newspaper pages, socks, and a grumpy Gran Torino stuck to him. Kaminari, Aizawa asked, I think it's getting a bit much. I can't stop. Kaminari zipped straight off the rug. He shot like a rogue Roomba across the room, and slid straight up the wall. Across the walls and ceiling, Kaminari blurred past, picking up more charge with every second. Kaminari, use it now. A blinding flash made Aizawa look away. When he finally blinked stars out of his eyes, Kaminari floated. His eyes glowed bright blue, and a nimbus of crackling sparks enveloped him. Thunderclouds rose in a spiraling veil around him, and the air reeked of ozone and static. I am the Alpha and Omega, Kaminari intoned, his voice reverberating like an electric bass. My primordial spark galvanized the first whispers of life, and an ionic supernova shall herald the universe's rebirth. I am Zeus. I am Thor. I am every divinity worshipped across time and civilizations. Now, witness my power. Kaminari pointed. The practice dummy exploded in a shower of sparks, smited into oblivion by a bolt of lightning thick enough to cleave the planet in twain. The glow subsided, and Kaminari drifted to the ground. Aizawa said, that was incredible. A perfect score, with extra credit, and all handwrite letters to Endeavor and All Might, and... Kaminari stared blankly at Aizawa, mumbled unintelligibly and blew a raspberry at him. Aizawa sighed. Never mind, you still fail. I really hope your hero ability isn't getting even harder than normal. That's too easy to make jokes with. Well, that was my plan, but when I was trying to get even harder, I asked myself, what's the hardest thing in the universe? Then it hit me, diamonds. Well, you're not wrong, exactly, but what? Diamond is at the top of the hardness scale. Harder than steel, my dude. That only refers to cutting. Diamonds can be smashed very easily. Then why would they call it hardness and not uncuttability? Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. So, you were trying to get hard. Right, and then this happened. Hiroshima clenched his fist and made a loud grunting noise. Aizawa awkwardly looked away and said, look, this is already awkward, maybe we can help you find Hiroshima. Is it working yet? Does your definition of working involve a giant blue man floating behind you? Crazy, right? Hiroshima said. He's good at punching things, and I'm good at taking punches, so we're like the perfect bro team. I call it, Diamond is unbreakable. It's really not. So, do I pass? You would have, but there's just one small problem. Is it the name? I could name it something manlier. No, see, you thought I was your homeroom teacher. Aizawa tore off his mask, revealing an entirely different face underneath, but it was me, Dio. Who? And once I've drained the blood of every person here and internalized the power of your quirks, I will be unstoppable. What about unbreakable? Yes, that too. Now, prepare to die. Dio lunged forward and jammed his nails into Kirishima's hair. He yelped and pulled away his punctured hand. Even my hair is unbreakable. Insolent whelp. Prepare to face the power of my stand. Za Warudo. Dio teleported behind Kirishima's back and stabbed him. Kirishima's skin held strong, and his stand punched the vampire away. Your armor is impressive, Dio said, but surely you must have a weak spot. You wish, dude. I'm hard as diamonds everywhere. Even between my legs. I really didn't need to know that. Dio coughed and said, yes, well, are your eyeballs as hard as everything else? Za Warudo. Dio ran forward, only to stop when he saw Crazy Diamond move. What? Impossible. How are you still moving? With my legs, man. No, you idiot. I stopped time. Why aren't you? A capture scarf wrapped up the vampire. Aizawa held his scarf in one hand and a flamethrower in the other. That is quite enough. Kirishima, you pass. Sweet, insolent human, Dio shouted. When I get out of this, I'm going to. Dio's threat got cut off by unearthly shrieking as Aizawa lit him on fire. After seconds, all that remained of the vampire was a pile of ash on the ground. Aizawa told his flamethrower, thanks for the assist, Midoriya. You are welcome, sensei. I can toast your marshmallows and your enemies to perfection. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.